Every species can smell its own extinction. Last ones left won't have a pretty time with it. In 10 years, maybe less, the human race will just become a bedtime story for their children. A podcast. Nothing more.
Yeah, I mean, that's good.
I think, unfortunately, those words might be true. The world probably ends with a podcast now, right?
Oh, well, that's it? It's just, a few episodes of people being like, all right, wrapping up.
Yeah. In one way or another. I'm saying either like a podcast is directly responsible for our extinction, or the final thing put out there is a podcast episode. Yes. They get the final word. Maybe both. Right. I don't know. Look, if we're lucky, it's us, right?
Yeah,
we caused
we'll
mass
be the ones
extinction.
who finish it off, right?
Yeah, and then we also get to do a recap podcast explaining how we ended humanity.
Mm-hmm.
That's the hope.
Mm-hmm. People start listening to Blank Check, and then they go around axe murdering people. That's what you're hoping for?
That's the kind of breakthrough success that I think has eluded us so far. I think
word of mouth.
Word of mouth. That's a viral sensation. You create an epidemic of mental instability.
All right. All right. I shouldn't have started us on this road.
I started it. I picked the quote. World's ended, David. I don't know if you know about it. And this is Blank Check with Griffin and David. I'm Griffin.
I'm David.
And it's a podcast about filmographies. Directors who have massive success early on in their careers are given a series of blank checks to make whatever crazy passion projects they want. And sometimes those checks clear, and sometimes they bounce, baby. And this is a mini-series on the films of John Carpenter. Today we're talking about In the Mouth of Madness. Now, I don't know if you had the same sort of feeling as me, David.
What's that?
But neither of us had seen this or Prince of Darkness before starting this series, correct?
Right.
And I feel like those are the two that people were kind of telling us, like, get ready for that one.
The other Apocalypse trilogy movies, yes.
Right. We're sort of seen as the hidden gems, I think, are the ones that have been reclaimed more only in the last couple of years.
Whatever. Yes.
10, whatever.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But these were the two I was really looking forward to. And I think I prefer this to Prince of Darkness. Not that it needs to be a competition. But I know it seems like you liked Prince of Darkness more than I did, and people in general seem to be really jamming on Prince of Darkness right now. This was my shit. This movie is my shit.
I like this more than Prince of Darkness, but I love them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, no, this movie's incredible.
Yeah, this movie rolls.
Yeah.
Our guest is silently giving thumbs up because she agrees with the analysis so far. She's also invited to talk. She could talk.
Just weigh in.
You can say anything you want, and then we introduce you. This is the weird backwards way in which we do things.
Yeah. Fuck yeah, is what I say towards In the Mouth of Madness. This is like top 2 Carpenter for me. Like, I really love this movie. And I just had, sometimes you're really lucky. You have like a great first watch experience.
Yeah.
I had the luck of seeing this at Music Box here in Chicago.
A lovely, incredible theater.
Lovely, amazing theater. My favorite in Chicago. And they showed this a couple years ago for their Music Box of Horrors. Their like overnight marathon of horror movies. I tapped out at like 4 a.m. though. I was like, I'm going home. But I was lucky enough to get to see In the Mouth of Madness for the first time there. And like, I didn't really know much about it. I knew it was Carpenter. And I was like, oh, I'll probably enjoy it. But this isn't one much, many people have talked about. And I was like, holy shit, this is so up my alley. This is so...
I agree.
For moi.
Mm-hmm. Have you seen Prince of Darkness? Like, do you like Prince of Darkness?
I do.
I dig it. Good. It's good vibes, but yes, this is. So wait, in this marathon, where did it fall? Like, was
that's
it
my question.
It was it was later in the evening, if I'm remembering. It may have been even like a midnight screening.
So your brain's already a little scrambled, which is good. I feel like.
I feel like the right context for this movie is you're hours into questioning what horror is.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. And fighting, consciousness, trying to stay awake. Yeah. Our guest today from Vulture is Angelica Jade Bastién. who very, I mean, you very passionately and quickly. I feel like we reached out to you very early on.
I was like, you got a Carpenter, and you had a Carpenter right away. You were like, I want In the Mouth of Madness.
My point is just that we gave you a pretty complete list of the movies. Like very early on, when Carpenter won our March Madness thing, we were like, Angelica, this feels like a great opportunity to get her on, long overdue, and you picked this immediately without a backup.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's probably Carpenter films that are more precise in certain ways, like The Thing.
Sure. Right.
And have a more a different sort of fun energy, like They Live. But like this one just really hits the spot for me because it's doing a few things that I really find interesting. Also, doing the whole a writer as God thing, kind of great for my ego. It's like, yes, we are, aren't we? We are the center of the universe, okay?
We think it and it happens.
In that canon, and it's obviously a film that I and very few others defend, this is a more successful, let's say conventionally successful...
Are you going to say Lady in the Water?
Correct.
I knew it was going to be Lady
if you're
in the Water.
comparing,
Yep.
But it is. They're very different movies in practice, but they're stemming from similar ideas.
Okay, well, all right.
in a very broad sense. This is obviously a more successful movie.
Leaps and bounds.
Yeah.
But just movies about like the power of artistry, positive and negative. Like it's a great subgenre, but it certainly has the risk of being in a Lady of the Water way. Like you can feel back patty or kind of up its own ass or like. I mean,
maybe a good choice that John Carpenter didn't cast himself to play Sutter Cane.
That'd be a good choice.
Oh, that's right.
That's yeah. But for Carpenter as well, like I mean, we'll talk about it, but yeah, like a guy who is at the center of like horror, like Halloween, like mixing like sex and violence and shocking people and people being like, is this allowed, for like so many years, to make a movie where it's like, yeah, maybe horror movies or horror art is gonna end the world and drive you all insane. Like I love that. I love him
that was
being
his whole
into this.
thing.
Yeah.
Like that was on such a rise in the 90s, this sort of like hand wringing about the things we consume making children violent and all that sort of shit. Right.
I remember those days because I was a kiddo and I loved horror, and I was like, yeah, look how it paid off. I'm hot, smart, accomplished. Let your kids watch horror, people.
Start them early. Throw them in front of Mouth of Madness.
Yeah, put them in front of the Mouth of Madness before they're 10. Let them know what true cinema is. I saw Hellraiser at 10 for the first time, and that's definitely affected some of my taste in certain places. I'll just say that. Have fun with that, kids. What are you talking about?
I'm actually good friends with Pinhead.
Yeah, Ben knows Pinhead, but you're just buds. Yeah. Like you're just like.
Well,
buds.
We're pen pals, but in the sense that we send each other nails in the mail.
Yeah, it's pen pals.
Yeah. I love that. I love that for you.
Ben, is that the second or third time you've made that exact joke on our podcast?
I'm gonna go with second.
Okay.
It's the good. Third time, it's gonna be great.
I can't wait.
It's gonna be even better.
Yeah.
So it's funny, Griff. Here's what I knew about In the Mouth of Madness. Because especially once I knew we were doing Carpenter, I'm like, I'm gonna, I want to go into anyone I haven't seen fairly cold. I knew Sam Neill was in it.
Yeah.
It's got that very oblique poster with the book opening and sort of screaming faces coming out of it. So that doesn't really do you any good.
It's a very specific type of 90s poster where I look at it and I go, you're not doing this movie any favors, are you? Like it is impossible. Not only does it not successfully convey what the movie is, but you're like, I don't even know what I'm looking at.
Yeah. I don't even know what this is supposed to be. If you see it from afar, you're like, that's just jumbled shapes. But here's the other funny thing, Griff. The one image from this movie that I knew turns out is pretty much the last image in the movie. Like I feel like I've seen the picture of Sam Neill sitting in the movie theater 1,000 times.
I feel like that gets memed a lot these days. Yes.
I don't know why.
I had forgotten it was from this. Yeah, what I knew was pretty much what you said, but I knew that Ben's background now, the Wall of Monsters, as it's called. I knew about that because our friend JD had talked about that, how he had seen this like special effects making of TV special when he was a child and was very taken with how those monsters looked and could never remember what movie it was from. And it was largely because they are so briefly on screen and so obscured that they weren't like visually recognizable, and he just had these memories of watching full daylight in a special effects warehouse, people working on them in great detail and how good they look. So I knew that. I knew it was Sam Neill, as you said, and I knew it was like Lovecraft inspired and that it was about some
I knew that too. Sure.
blending of reality and fiction. I did not really know how it played out. I think I assumed that, well, Sam Neill must play Lovecraft or a Lovecraft-esque figure.
Yeah,
I didn't
sure.
know
That he's
how
the
it
author.
unfurled.
Right,
Yeah, I just he seems like a man of letters. But yes, I knew very little other than that, just the base elements.
What a fucking guy Sam Neill is.
I
by the
love
way.
him.
I
love him.
I feel like we just gotta go right into explaining how
What
Sam
a
Neill
hot-
gets to this point.
Run. I mean, the fact that he had just, you always forget, of course, he's in Jurassic Park the year before.
Right.
I mean, I love him in the piano. He's not the standout of the piano. He has the toughest role in the piano, but like that he had that the same year as
Yes.
Jurassic Park is special.
Well, everyone always talks about how Spielberg had Jurassic Park and Schindler's List in the same year, but Sam Neill's quietly doing the same thing in the same year, where it's like king of art house, king of blockbusters, you know?
Yeah.
Oscars and
Possession is a good one.
Possession
He's in.
rules. Right.
Yeah,
Possession is so-
love that movie.
You know, and it's funny because that came out the same year as Omen 3, which is sort of his like Hollywood breakout.
It's
Yeah.
kind of the same thing.
And
He's
it's sort of-
doing like,
right.
yeah.
It's kind of the mocked, horror movie. Whereas the Possession, I feel like was sort of a cult thing when it came out, and now has become. I feel like that's become a very hot movie in the last. Again, it's sort of revived, and people have rediscovered it. It's so good. It's funny. He just seems like a chill dude. Like, to this day, like he seems like someone who never really chased the dollar.
No.
Not that, you can chase the dollar if you want to. I get it. But like he kind of, he was in Jurassic Park and he was like, cool, I'm going to do whatever I want. Like, I'm not going to be in, anything I don't want to be in.
Like,
he's such.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, like, this movie is a pretty wild cash-in of your post-Jurassic Park leading man status, you know?
Oh, totally.
Which
It's
it really is. If you look at his
Yeah.
other films in the immediate wake of Jurassic Park, this is, like, the closest to him doing a studio film until Event Horizon, which is also fucking bug nuts.
I love Event Horizon.
Freak City. Me too. It
Right.
fucking rules.
But he just made some dang-ass freak movies.
Yeah. Oh, I bet he a freak. Oh, what if Sam Neill's a freak? Should I
might
put
be.
him on my time travel fuck list?
I think.
Early
I'm talking.
90s.
I'd fucking now.
I'd
He's got
fuck
a
him
big
now.
beard. He's
Yeah.
like on a farm in Australia or whatever.
He owns
But,
a
like,
vineyard. Hey, have you seen his
That's
fucking...
what it is. He's got wine.
His
right,
vineyard's
right. He's a wine
incredible,
guy.
and I went down the rabbit hole of his social media for his vineyard, and it's fucking great. He just
Yeah.
posts videos of him just saying what he thinks and feels, surrounded by a
love
bunch
it.
of grapes.
But that's what, Angelica, that's what I'm kind of talking around here. Like, doesn't he seem quietly like a little bit of a freak, right?
He
In a
has
good
to
way.
be.
Yeah, I'm usually good at sniffing that out in a man. It's a great skill to have as a woman who dates men. And I think he is. I agree with you, David. I now really want to fuck Sam Neill from this
But, like,
1993 to
early
19
90s.
Yeah, early
Right,
90s
right,
Sam
right,
Neill.
right.
Time travel fuck list. Everybody should have it. Just
It's funny. And Griff, yes, we can talk a little Neil. It's funny, but like, he's from, is he from New Zealand?
He's
from New
Irish. He's
Zealand. And, well, he was
Irish.
born in
Right.
Ireland, but he moved
Right.
to New Zealand.
He moves to New Zealand. Correct.
But so obviously he works down there. He somehow, he broke into European productions with the help of James Mason.
Correct.
How did he know James Mason? I don't know.
Okay,
Apparently,
I did a deep dive on him recently. I have to refamiliarize myself here.
apparently James Mason sort of brought him into Hollywood and got him the Omen role. And he's in Possession. But then he's in this TV show called Riley Ace of Spies.
Right.
That was what helped him almost get Bond. He was almost Bond, and Timothy Dalton got it instead. Which I feel like it probably breaks out okay for Sam Neill. You know, like I don't know if Sam
yes,
Neill
yes.
would have been a perfect box, you know, and he might have gotten boxed in by it like a lot of people do. Like, I don't know.
I'm going to find this quote here that JJ, our researcher, pulled up.
Sam Neill, I will read this quote while you sort of look around, Griff. Like, he liked playing villains, he said. I like playing bad guys, characters with moral ambiguity. They're easier to play. Good guys, often amorphous, not well delineated. Bad guys have psychological defects. You know, like he obviously just... He comes to Hollywood, he's happy to work here, but he's drawn to stranger parts. And it's... I feel like even in Jurassic Park, where he's playing a good-hearted guy, he kind of makes Alan Grant... You know, he tries to make Alan Grant as weird as he can, I guess. Because, like, there's that scene where he kind of harasses the kid with the raptor claw, right? You know?
Yeah.
There's this sort of weird ambiguity of his relationship with Laura Dern, where you're like, are these two together? Like, what's the vibe?
It's a very unconventional leading man for a movie like that, where you're like, essentially, he is the one with the emotional arc. The emotional arc is he hates kids, and he learns to tolerate them. He's not married, right? He does not really have a romantic interest. It's not like he has to learn how to be a better father or learn to settle down and be a man. Right. It's just like, kids fucking bug me. I'm terrorizing a kid at a dig site at the beginning, and by the end, I've gotten a little bit protective of these two kids who I decided to not let die.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I get it. Fuck them kids, okay?
You've got the Michael Jordan meme take on kids. Fuck them kids.
There was a quote I had in my mind's eye that I couldn't find. Now I'm wondering if I combine things from just... I've been reading Sam Neill stuff for the last couple of weeks. But that his thing of just like, look, obviously I did Jurassic Park and I was in the mix for Bond, but that's not really what I'm interested in. And like, as you said, he's like, I tend to prefer to play villains because they're more interestingly written than having to be the bland leading man. And it is interesting that the couple of times in larger, this is small budget, but let's say studio films, that he played the leading man in the wake of Jurassic Park, it was like this and Event Horizon and other movies where the whole premise is ostensibly normal guy starts losing his grip on sanity. You know? And
he's
it
using
wild.
His handsomeness to his advantage, you know, to portray the freakiness of a seemingly sort of regular dude.
Right, that he wants to break that facade down as quickly as possible. He is also very handsome. I agree. He belongs on the time travel fuck list. But I keep on going back to, like, it makes so much sense to cast him as adult Damien. There is something just a little menacing.
Totally.
Just even in neutral state.
I've never seen that movie. I don't think it's like very well regarded or anything, but yes, like on paper, he is wise casting for someone who is both possibly going to be president and like is the devil, right? He's the devil, right? Son of the devil, whatever he is.
Yeah, right. At that point, he's like, I mean, what? It's My Brilliant Career, right?
That appears to be the movie that James Mason liked him in. That seems to be, from my Googling, what James Mason took an interest in. The Gillian Armstrong movie.
Sleeping Dogs is like his first leading man movie. And then Brilliant Career, I guess, is the one that crosses over a little more. I think, I mean, right, you have The Possession, Omen 3 in the same year. And then I think Cry in the Dark is big for him. Even though
the Meryl Dingo Ate My Baby movie?
Right, just because it's like, well, it's a legitimate Meryl movie, and he held his own against her. Like, it feels like from that moment on, that's when there's a shift of Hollywood taking him seriously, and then it's like
he's in
Dead Calm and Hunt for Red October. Right. Even still, it is surprising that he gets picked for Jurassic Park. Like, he's not a guy who it feels like, certainly if you think about today when there's like the pipeline of like, the leading man, and it's like, here's Jai Courtney. We've decided Jai Courtney's going to be a movie star. He's going to screen test for 15 things, and he'll get 3 of them, and the public doesn't really know what to do with him. You know, that he was like, the story is famously that Spielberg, I think, originally wanted it to be Harrison Ford and Sean Connery as Alan Grant and why am I forgetting the character's name? Attenborough's character.
Hammond.
Yes,
Hammond.
Right. But there was the idea of like, here's this huge book, here's Spielberg, it's this massive bidding war, get the two biggest movie stars to play the parts.
Mm-hmm.
And then he had that realization of like, the star of this is going to be the dinosaurs. And we're going to spend so much money on the effects, just get good actors.
Yeah.
Right.
But he is an odd choice.
No,
He
I mean,
is.
but what you're saying, Griff, and like Angelica's sigh, like think about how the latest Jurassic Park had Chris Pratt in it, and like I don't know how
Gross.
Angelica feels.
Gross.
That's
Look, don't even get me started on these motherfuckers who are quote unquote leading men today.
I was kind of trying to get you started.
We're trying to get you started. We are attempting to get you started, Angelica.
Okay, can I just say something
Anything,
that is
yes.
on my spirit?
As many things.
John David Washington is like the best example of this terrible state we're in for leading men, where it's like he's so fucking boring on screen. I'm like, how is your father Denzel Washington? Like, where's the charisma, baby? Where's the, the raw sort of intimacy that you can have with a leading man? We don't really get that these days. There's not really many of the younger crop of actors I'm at all interested in. At least the ones who are actually getting roles are like boring as shit. And they feel neutered sexually too. Like, I can imagine Sam Neill fucking a bitch.
Absolutely.
I can't imagine half of these motherfuckers out here have any sort of good stroke game. They don't. I have a better stroke game than these motherfuckers.
I would say this is the problem, and it may not even be the actors. It's the material is often
Right.
is often kind of sexless. I mean,
Right. There was that piece about like what was the title? But I forget who wrote it. But the like everyone is beautiful, no one has sex. About how sexless our blockbusters are these days.
Yeah, they are sexless. I mean, American cinema as a whole is not great.
Like, has Chris Pratt? Has he ever had sex? I'm literally thinking now.
Passengers.
Ugh. Right.
Oh my
Right.
God, that movie. What the fuck was that movie, y'all? That was that was something.
And that was like Jennifer Lawrence's first sex scene too. I remember her like talking about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
You know, and like Guardians of the Galaxy, he has like
No, he doesn't though. Right. Exactly.
he has
It's
one night
alluded that,
stands.
like,
Yeah.
but you never really know about it. It's just
No,
sort of like,
no,
this guy's
his-
a playboy, and you're like, I guess you're telling me that he's a
His
playboy.
relationship
Yeah.
with Gamora is very chaste, and there's the thing
Right.
at the beginning of the first movie where he's like driving the ship, and
He's
then the
got a
woman
lady
comes out
in
from
the ship,
right.
but like,
Right.
Yeah,
it's,
that's right.
It's very whatever. They're just trying not to piss anyone off, I guess. I don't know. I prefer Sam Neill's wild horn dog energy that we are now kind of projecting on him a little bit, but he is really cute.
Yeah, now we're like, oh yeah, he's
Now
like
we're like-
fucking all these broads.
Yeah.
No,
This guy is down for anything. It's like Sam Neill seems like a nice guy with his vineyard. But this is a freaky movie. It's not like this one is it's less sex focused or whatever, but like, I just generally like see him as someone who's happy to roll up his sleeves with
Yes.
strange, interesting material. And I
Totally.
appreciate that about him.
Yeah, there's also
Yes.
this thing. Have you ever seen Memoirs of an Invisible Man, Angelica?
No, I have not.
So it's very bizarre and not a successful movie. But it's like there's 4 years between They Live and that. That's his sort of big return. That's his biggest budget movie ever, working with an established A-list star, and it sucks and it kills that A-list star's career and it like sets him back. But Sam Neill's really good in this supporting role as sort of just the kind of I don't know, the CIA agent chasing him, right? It's not a very nuanced part, but he does it well. And there's this moment in the film that I spotlighted when we did that episode where the idea is that the Invisible Man is holding a gun to his head, that he's being held at gunpoint. And the way the gag is achieved is very clearly that they have just glued a gun to the side of Sam Neill's head. And so he has to do the whole thing himself. And there's this scene where, like, in a wide shot, he runs out of his office and down like the hallway of the offices, and he's playing like the Invisible Man has like, you know, him in a chokehold with the gun against him, and it's like he's levitating. Like he somehow walks as if someone is carrying him. And it's clearly just him. It's not wire work. It's just a very physically committed thing of like, that's a guy who's just here and is ready to get you the best results and has no protectiveness over his star image, is ready to like do the fucking work. And similarly, this movie opens with him going so fucking hog wild with these guards, right?
Oh yeah, I love that. I think it's actually his first line is, "I'm sorry about the balls. It was a lucky shot. That's all." Like after
the first time you see his face after 5 minutes, like he spends the first 5 minutes of the movie just kicking and screaming and flailing with his head down.
Yeah, been there. Yeah.
And he's drawn all over himself. He's
Crosses. Yeah.
He's got crosses and so on all over himself.
Drawn over his room, over his skin, over his gown.
Yeah.
It's the classic Lovecraft setup. You are introduced to an insane person and they're like, "So what happened to you?" And he's like, "Well, let me start at the beginning, you know, and like, I used to be a regular guy, insurance adjuster, you know, and then we're off."
Bring me bring. Bring me bring. Bring me bring.
Keep it ringing.
David, don't be rude. Pick up the phone.
Sometimes I'm busy.
Bring me bring. Yeah, what are you busy doing now?
I don't want to be one of those eager, you know, kind of, you know, the guy who just picks up on the first ring. Let him wait. Play it cool.
Okay,
all right.
Fair.
Click hello. Hey.
You got a second?
I don't know. I mean, I guess I do, but who is this?
It's been a while, hasn't it? Since we've spoken.
Sure, but I don't know who you are, so I can't answer that question.
It's me. Steve from Blue's Clues.
It's Steve from Blue's Clues. The friend to the mystery-solving puppy.
It's been a while.
Have you been on the show before? I apologize, Steve. I can't
haven't.
remember.
It's been a while. I went off to college, remember?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, Steve Burns. You know, yeah. You left the show to do other stuff, and people were always asking where you went. Yeah.
Hey, I never forgot about you. Ever.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate that. I was worried you had.
There's something else I never forgot about.
What's that?
My floppy penis, David.
This may be illegal, but okay. It's been a while. What's okay? Just sure. I'm sorry to hear about that. It's actually a very common problem.
Things have changed. I went off to college. We all got student loans to pay, and in the time since then, my penis has gotten really floppy.
Well, look. There's nothing wrong with that, and it's good to talk about it. And confidence can take you far in life, and it can help in the bedroom. Okay, you've got an alarm going off, Steve.
It's to remind myself to check in with another person and tell them, "Hey, it's been a while, but I never forgot about you, ever."
Okay.
Every other minute, I have to do another one of these.
Okay. Well, Steve, let me recommend that you try Blue Chew, which is a unique online service that delivers
Blue
this.
Chew.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. It sort of sounds like that show you
Sounds
used
like,
to be on.
right, yeah, exactly. Okay, go on.
It delivers the same active ingredients as Viagra and Cialis, but in chewable tablets at a fraction of the cost. You can take them anytime, day or night, so you can plan ahead or be ready whenever an opportunity arises. Process is simple. You sign up at bluechew.com. You consult with a licensed medical provider, and once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. The best part, it's all done online. So there's no visit to the doctor's office, no awkward conversations, and no waiting in line at the pharmacy. It's made in the USA, prepared and shipped direct to your door in a discreet package.
Sounds like there's no mystery to solve there.
Yeah, that's true. There's not really a lot of clues to follow here.
No, remember we used to do that? We used to run around, find clues. Mr. Salt, Miss Pepper.
That's fine, but I don't want to talk too much about that when I'm talking about your issues with erectile dysfunction and the extra confidence you could benefit from. Yeah, just because it's kind of like you don't want to cross the streams there. They're kind of you want to keep those things separate. That's just my opinion.
David, look at you. Look at all that you've accomplished in the time since I last spoke to you. It's just so amazing, right?
Okay, well, you could benefit from extra confidence when it's time to perform. So Blue Chew can help, and we've got a special deal for our listeners. You can try Blue Chew free when you use our promo code CHECK at checkout. Just pay $5 shipping. That's bluechew.com, promo code CHECK, to receive your first month free. Visit bluechew.com for more details and important safety information, and we thank Blue Chew for sponsoring this podcast.
David, I want to tell you that I really couldn't have done that without your help.
It's nice to talk to you, Steve.
And I never forgot
Glad
about
you're doing
you,
well.
David. Ever. Also, I'm the character, not the actor.
You're the character.
I'm the character Steve from Blue's Clues.
Okay, that's good.
And the ads for Blue Chew.
Bluechew.com. Promo code check. Should I get a little into the context of this movie, Griff? Michael DeLuca? Can we
I
talk
think
Mike
so.
DeLuca?
The DeLuca thing is fascinating because we're coming off a couple Carpenter movies. I mean, not Invisible Man, obviously, but like a couple movies in a row where he wrote it under a pseudonym. And
Right. They Live, he wrote himself. Prince of Darkness, right. He's credited as Quatermass, right.
I guess those are the two, right. And there were a couple movies in between there where he was heavily involved in the script, but he, didn't technically write it. But he does write.
Yeah.
Martin Quatermass and Frank Armitage are his two. And it's like both a case of him saying like, those two movies have so many influences that it felt weird putting my own name on it. So I create a fake name that's an homage to some of my influences. But he also sort of said like, I was just fucking tired of seeing my name so many times on every movie. Like I felt like an
Carpenter's
egomaniac.
blah. Right.
Written, directed, edited, scored by, catering by.
Right. What you're saying, Griff, this is different. This is just him picking up a script and being like, I like this script,
Right.
I'm sure he said like I made it my own, like I'm sure he wrote, but like this is Mike DeLuca wrote this script when he was like 22 years old.
Yeah.
And was basically just like, what if I made like a modern Lovecrafty kind of tale about creepy beings from another dimension trying to take over, but it's like set in the present.
22? Wait,
He's 22 years old.
are you serious?
He gets hired onto New Line in development when he's 19. He
What the
writes the
fuck?
script when he's 22. He had already at that time, like, he wrote some episodes of the Freddy Krueger TV show, Freddy's Nightmares, and then he ended up writing a couple other horror films. He wrote Freddy 5 or 6?
He wrote Freddy 6, Freddy's Dead.
Yeah.
Which is
okay.
probably the worst Freddy
I
movie
think so.
if you're excluding the remake.
Ooh.
It's and he wrote I believe he may have worked on he doesn't have a writing credit on. Oh no, he produced Texas Chainsaw 3.
Right.
So,
So
he's been working in the world, world of low budget,
He's a
New Line horror. Yeah.
development guy at New Line who's also creatively interested in horror and is writing and producing some of this stuff himself, more hands-on. He writes Mouth of Madness. He wants Carpenter to see it first. That's his top choice. Carpenter's like, this is interesting. I don't know. There are ideas here. I wouldn't know how to do the work. I have some other things I have boiling right now. Maybe I'll come back to this later. Then they go to what's her name, who directed Pet Sematary.
They go to Mary Lambert, who
Yeah.
made Pet Sematary. They also offered it to Tony Randall, who made Hellraiser 2. Speaking
Right.
of Hellraiser, that doesn't happen. And then after Memoirs and Body Bags, Carpenter is like, "All right, I'm around.
Right.
I want to
Like,
work on that script."
The 5
Yeah.
years between when he first reads the script and when he agrees to do it, essentially, he has a big flop. The other things he tried to do don't come to fruition. They've developed 2 versions of this movie with different directors that don't go. But also in those 5 years, DeLuca goes from being like a development executive to the head.
Of New Line. So
That's right.
he's like, "You want to do my script?"
He's 27 years old, and now he can make it a top priority. The script I wrote when I was 22, I really want to see this get made.
I will greenlight my own script, essentially.
I am still stuck on the 22-year-old
It's
thing.
bizarre. I mean,
Like, what?
The impression I get is that it's New Line in the 80s, and similar with Paramount, right, with Friday the 13th, like those little horror movies, like no one was minding the store. It was truly kind of like old-fashioned 30s Hollywood, where it was like, hey, I know this kid who likes horror flicks.
Right.
Let's get him in,
Let
right?
an
Like,
intern write
no
it.
one's checking on anyone, right?
That sounds fun.
Yeah, it was probably fun, and there was probably some bad behavior. Yeah.
And
Oh,
early
totally.
model, well, notorious bad behavior with DeLuca, but he's
Well,
like,
we'll get to that.
right, he's sort of infamous as sort of, I feel like the prototype for this thing that has now flooded Hollywood, which is like movie dork who comes in full of like piss and vinegar as a teenager, and it's like, I know how to do
Right.
this stuff, and it's like
I
it's
watch
someone.
movies.
It's someone who like genuinely loves genre shit, and then at some point has figured out how to like create the veneer of like a big swinging dick Hollywood asshole, despite being very young, so that the other big swinging dick Hollywood assholes hire them because they're like, well, you're not a dork. You seem to be like a wheeler dealer player, but you say you like this stuff and you know it. So then they just go like, I don't know, make your fucking horror shit. And then DeLuca becomes this notorious like, he wears leather and he's fucking like quote unquote bad boy, and he's sort of like acting out all the fantasies of who he wished he thought he'd been in high school. And then his New Line tenure essentially ends because he gets a blowjob in public at an Oscar party in the late 90s.
He sure did. At Arnold Rifkin's house in 1998, he got his dick sucked while, quote, several guests looked on, end quote. That's from the Hollywood Reporter.
The story is
Scary
literally
was called.
they're in like a general room of a mansion, and he just takes his pants off, and that starts happening, and everyone slowly moves away. And then Arnold Rifkin has this amazing quote where he was like, yeah, I mean, I had to take that chair out back and burn it. I'm not going to invite someone over to my house and tell them to sit in that fucking chair.
And the wildest thing, or maybe it's not wild given the Hollywood, is like he just sort of successfully, he like leaves New Line and reinvents himself as like kind of a, you know, prestige-y producer. Like he's the guy who did frickin' Social Network and what's it called, Moneyball, right?
He has 3 Best Picture nominations in a row. He goes over to DreamWorks for 4 years, kind of belly flops there, and then goes over to Sony. Amy Pascal takes him in and fucking hits it out of the park at Sony and does Social Network, Moneyball, and Captain Phillips 3 years in a row. He has like 10 years at Sony, and then he leaves Sony to independently produce 50 Shades of Grey. He like buys the 50 Shades of Grey rights himself a little bit ahead of the curve and made a fucking killing on that too. Now he's in charge of MGM.
Now he's in charge of MGM. That's right.
I'm sorry, but you know, these Hollywood motherfuckers, especially these men, be wild. You're literally getting your dick sucked at a party.
Correct.
That
At
is
a
like
party.
that is rude.
And it was not
Yeah.
a blowjob
rude.
party. It was
No,
not. It was
not.
an Oscar party.
It was not.
It was not a party where it was like, please come, bring your penis. Like we will be getting them sucked later. No, this was just we're gonna watch the Oscars. We're gonna have some canapes.
It was not a BYOP party, to clarify.
But like it is funny, Griff, or it is, you know, like New Line in the 90s is this kind of, it's not quite as disruptive as like some, but like he greenlit Seven and Boogie Nights and like The Wedding Singer, Dumb and Dumber, or like, you know, he was
Austin Powers.
Clearly Austin Powers. Like
Wow.
he was
Yeah.
clearly like fairly good at picking projects.
Yeah.
Or in the case of like a Boogie Nights or a Seven, being like, look, do whatever it is you want to do. You know, like here's a fair amount of money. Like I imagine it'll work out.
No, and like Boogie Nights, he gets a lot of credit for. I mean, it's why the Licorice Pizza's at MGM now, because it's like he has this relationship where he kind of made PTA. Yeah, no, I mean, his run at New Line pretty much ends right before Lord of the Rings, which is obviously this like huge transitional moment for them, but also a thing they cannot sustain. And within like 10 years of Lord of the Rings coming out, New Line no longer exists really, other than as a label. It's like bizarre history, but he's jumping in there at a time where it's like the Freddy movies have been huge and the first Ninja Turtles have been huge. And they've kind of gotten minted as like, oh, you're not in the film ghetto anymore. You don't have any prestige, but you've had crossover success. And he simultaneously like continues to make money doing the things that they did before, but also adds like 5 new sort of tentacles for them. And they're like getting Oscar nominations. They're having hit comedies, horror movies, action movies, Rush Hour. Like just he fucking had a lot of success. It is bizarre that he also wrote this movie.
Yeah, I'm having some sort of dissonance with all I know about him and in this movie.
Yeah, it's hard to reconcile.
I think Carpenter, took his pass at it or whatever.
Yes.
Oh
but
yeah,
yes.
totally.
Carpenter in 93 basically was like, I like that it's a Lovecraft thing. There's never been like a good Lovecraft movie. I like that it's got kind of old sci-fi. I like that it's got like a Stephen King vibe. I thought it would be fun. Like he's so good at picking stuff off the pile that I feel like
I know.
people would probably dismiss as trash, right? Like I just feel like so many of his projects are the kinds of things that in the hands of a lesser director, people are like, yeah, this is like a 6 out of 10 genre movie.
And even if Carpenter refined this script greatly, and it, he makes it sound like the reason he passed on it the first time earlier in the 90s is because he felt like the ideas weren't perfectly executed. By all accounts, all of the ideas were there from DeLuca. Like, it is still wild that he, at such a young age, came up with this concept and all the facets of it, even if Carpenter sort of polished it,
Yeah, totally.
It's not like Carpenter takes credit for like, well, that wasn't in the script and I added that whole thing. That wasn't a theme.
No, it's right. It's in there. You're right.
I want to say a brief aside though about the age thing.
Please.
I think it's very easy to get caught up in seeing like very young people do like cool shit and whatever. And obviously he continued to do other cool shit by everything he was producing.
And some uncool shit at Oscar
And
parties.
some really uncool shit. And I mean, if we heard this, imagine the stuff we haven't heard in my mind. You know what I mean?
100%.
That's what he
exactly
did
right. Yes.
in public.
Yeah, but it's like easy to kind of as I get older, I've just become more aware. And I think for women, you hit your 30s and it's a whole different ball game. But it's very easy to fetishize youth in a way. And I don't want to do that. So I just am saying this to the audience. Don't fetishize youth. Life is bold and beautiful.
It's something Hollywood loves to do.
I focus on it less as like an accomplishment. And I'm talking in this specific case, but also in general. And more just, it is bizarre that someone of that age could have this sort of presence of mind to conceive of this film.
Yeah, I agree. Because the ideas are really strong and they had to have been there to at least caught Carpenter's eye and led him to direct. And
they're fairly profound ideas, and it's an interesting mixture of ideas. I mean, he's pulling together a couple disparate things in a very interesting way.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And I'm really curious to hear from you guys your relationship to Lovecraft, because I have some spicy things to say about Lovecraft, but probably not surprising because I'm black as hell, and that motherfucker was racist.
He was very racist.
So
One of the worst.
Racist.
I've never really read any Lovecraft. Perhaps that is embarrassing to admit or something, but I think partly because he's someone where people are like, I will read the stories. I don't know, like for some reason, I basically only read like a couple short stories. I've never delved into him. And yeah, he has this reputation, obviously, where it's like enormously influential, basically sort of a subgenre unto himself. But yeah, also a huge racist that I have never wanted to delve deeper, I guess. Maybe. I don't know.
That's my exact same thing. Like I greatly enjoy Lovecraftian things, and I largely
love
stay
big beasts.
Right.
People going crazy. I like all, a thing you see and you cannot comprehend. Like, I love that idea.
Right. I think I've just largely stayed away because it's like, well, other people do Lovecraft stuff, or they adapt it, or they sort of are inspired by it, and I can watch that stuff, which isn't as tinged by his fucking horrible thoughts. Because it's not just like, oh, he was a bad person who wrote good things. His fucking worldviews are inextricably tied to his work, and when other people adapt it or homage it, they can sometimes separate those things a little more successfully.
Have you read much yourself, Angelica? Or?
Yeah, I've read a little bit of Lovecraft as a teenager just because I read a lot of horror and sci-fi and fantasy, and I still do. And yeah, you can clock that this motherfucker is racist. And it's like, I get really annoyed when people are like, but I mean, look at the time he lived in. And I'm like, no, he was even really racist for his. Also, who gives a shit? I'm sorry, white people are still racist. That doesn't mean a damn thing to me. You know what I mean?
No, but he was right. It's not one of those things where you're like, well, there were, he was. That's how people thought at the time. It's like, no. He wrote shit down. Like he was. Really,
he was like, this is a good idea that I want to be remembered with. Like, let me put this in my work.
Not to be dismissive, because I do know people like Lovecraft, and I'm sure there's lots. But he's also always felt to me like someone where it's like, have you read like a couple Lovecraft stories? You kind of got the picture with him. Like, he would kind of go to the same well over and over. Right?
Whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did a jerk off motion. This is obviously not video. This is a podcast, but I want everybody to know I did a jerk off motion. It's one of my favorite things to do. But
Funny.
Yeah, like with Lovecraft, I'm definitely with you, Griffin. Like, there's a lot of Lovecraft shit, like Lovecraftian shit that like took some of his ideas and then kind of go in a different direction with it that I really did, because I like that whole old ones, dark shit, yawning abysses, existential crises as a human being, looking at something beyond our understanding. I love all that shit. I don't love like something like Lovecraft Country. I think that's something that, God, I hated that show. Can I just say that?
What?
I fucking hated that show.
I didn't watch Lovecraft Country.
Me neither.
Partly because the buzz on it kind of curdled so fast.
You're fine.
Yes, I think I'm fine. What the fuck was Lovecraft Country about? My other reason I didn't watch is like no one could succinctly define for me like what the premise of that show was.
Because it's kind of a mess. I mean, it's like the through line is what is Jonathan Major's character Tick kind of has some strange inheritance, and like there's so many different storylines. So like Journey Smollett has everything with her sister. Her sister gets in with the main villain who can take other forms. Like there's some magic they do. And you get to see the sister. One of the weirdest storylines is the sister becoming a white woman and like reckoning with that occasionally.
Yeah.
So
Sounds bizarre.
but the thing is, it's like stupid. Also, a lot of, colorism issues in the show where it's like Journey Smollett's light-skinned self is kind of exalted in a way while her sister, or half-sister in the show, is a darker-skinned, bigger woman. And the things they do with that character, I was like, do y'all not see how you're replicating the same problems that we critique white directors for? No one, just me.
I mean,
okay.
That show kind of got, people, I don't know. It seems like people turned on that show because it kind of got, buried.
As they should, but I don't even understand why they liked it at first. I remember watching the, like a screener early on, and I was like, I see what this is doing with the Lovecraft shit, but it doesn't have a strong enough perspective on it. And it's so slapdash, taking so many influences from elsewhere that it doesn't really feel like its own thing. Fuck that show, sincerely. Anybody who thinks it deserved a second season needs Jesus and needs to watch better things, in my opinion.
That, I did not watch it. I have no creative opinion on it. I did not watch it mostly because the vibes I got from it were
Weird
what
vibes.
you were saying, in addition to just sort of like a peak prestige TV messiness of just like there's way too much fucking going on here, and they don't know what they're actually trying to do. But it is bizarre, the arc of that show, of just like all this buzz, it comes out, it's very divisive, it seems to do pretty well. A year later, it gets a ton of Emmy nominations, is canceled 2 days later, and then loses every Emmy. It's like a very weird.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Very weird.
Very weird.
But that's why I feel like the approach here is better. The sort of like, let's do a Lovecrafty thing.
Yes.
Like, let's get the vibes, but we can make it contemporary. We can kind of do whatever we want with it. And like, we do not have to be indebted to his particular type of storytelling.
But what's so
like, beyond
wild
the vibes.
too is that this movie is essentially combining like Lovecraft, Stephen King, and L. Ron Hubbard.
Yeah.
Right? Like Lovecraft is the thing that influences it most in terms of the vibe and the look and the mythology and all that sort of stuff. But you're saying, like, what if there was a present day author who had the Lovecraft sensibility with the success and public visibility of Stephen King, but the effect on its readers was that of L. Ron Hubbard. And also, who do you obviously cast to play the composite of those three people? Jürgen Prochnow.
Love that
He's
guy.
good. He's good.
He's good.
He's
that
good,
guy's
but
got fucking gravitas out
He
the ass.
does.
Intense
oh my
casting
God.
choice.
Wait,
Intense.
is that his real hair?
I believe so.
I don't
I
know.
hope
if
so,
that's
because
his
that
real
would be
hair.
cool
Because
if it
he
was.
looks great.
He
Great.
looks great when like the doors of that black demonic church open and he's just like, "Hey bitches, that's right. I got your kids. I got I got you." And I'm like, "Yeah, you do, Sutter Cane. You do."
Did you? I mean, you look at his Wikipedia picture, which is from 2 years ago. He's still got quite a mane on him.
Nice head of hair.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Nice
for
head of hair.
him.
I think
Good
that's
to know
Nice head of gray
sincerity.
hair. I mean, I associate him with Dust Boot, obviously.
Right.
Right. And Dune, which
It's
he's
Beverly Hills Cop 2.
like a guy who stoic, kind of,
Sure.
like I said, a lot of gravitas, right? Like sort of, tough German guy. I like how wild and funny he is in this, and like kind of weird and playful.
He's
Yeah.
going a little Klaus Kinski with it.
Yeah, a little
Yeah.
bit, and I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think everybody's really bringing it. Like even small bit players, like in this movie, it just seems like I don't know. Everyone got on the right wavelength with what this movie needed from them in terms of performance, and it like really works for me how they all play off each other and just the energy.
I love Julie Carmen, who is not
really
an
good.
actress I know well. What do I know her? She's in like one other thing, I think. That
She's
I've
the
seen.
mother in Gloria. I mean, that's the thing that I know
That's
her
what
from.
it is, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Which is
So she's got the
actually- yeah,
big scene at the beginning of the movie.
at
but
the
yeah.
beginning, right?
Right.
And I mean, she's just like. She's super hot. She's kind of different, like, for a Hollywood leading lady, right? She's got this sort of like, Spanish Cuban, the dark hair, and like she's styled really well. And she's just cool in this movie. Like she's not
cool.
trying hard or she doesn't seem like she's trying hard at all, right? Like she just sort of seems very, very chill opposite all the sort of like intensity. I don't know how to lay my finger on this.
Do you know about her whole career in therapy?
No, I don't know about her career in therapy. What's her career in therapy?
She has a master's degree in clinical psychology. Then she became a licensed marriage family therapist. Then she became a licensed yoga therapist.
Cool.
She works as a drama therapist now in prisons.
Wow, that's really
Does
fascinating.
drama therapy and yoga therapy at like rehab centers.
Wow.
Okay.
Yoga therapy at eating disorder centers, school district programs. I mean, she's like, I think she was doing it simultaneous, but has shifted to doing it more. I mean, she still acts, but
but less so to these days.
But
right.
I think that speaks a little bit to her interesting energy.
Yeah, totally. I mean, what I love about her performance is its physicality. Like, when you're introduced to her, as Sutter Cane's editor, she has a very precise professional woman physicality. Like, this is a woman who's had to, like, you can immediately tell this is a woman who's had to move through predominantly male spaces, and she knows how to hold her own. So when you see, like, later in the film, as things go left, there's a sort of, like, looseness to her physicality, I noticed. And, like, she just kind of, like she could just fall apart at any moment that I thought was really fascinating.
It makes sense that she has spent this much time like on yoga and dance and physical
Totally.
theater and all this sort of stuff. Yeah.
And then you got Charlton Heston swinging in for 5 scenes.
Can we
He's
talk
good.
about Charlton Heston's 90s are so weird.
This is right around Wayne's World 2, right, Griff?
Right, and you
Sort of
have
right
like
in that-
True Lies. You kind of end the decade with him narrating Armageddon. Like it is
Oh, yeah.
bizarre for how kind of like iconic and legendary he was. And the 90s are when he starts becoming mostly thought of as a gun nut, right? Like, this transition is happening. He did a lot of, you can hire me to give you weight and gravitas shit.
Yeah.
We're right. Wayne's World 2, Tombstone, True Lies, all of these are either like small supporting parts or like uncredited cameos. Mouth of Madness, Hamlet, he's the narrator of Hercules, and then the narrator of Armageddon. And then the commissioner in Any Given Sunday. Right.
Yep. Instant gravitas. That's his thing. He's like, I'll come in.
Yeah.
I'll give you some gravitas. And then he's like done because he has Alzheimer's. Like it's over.
Right. Then his 2000s are Town and Country, the main dog, like the boss dog in Cats and Dogs, like the commissioner of dogs. He's the voice of that. He has his one scene in Planet of the Apes that I contend is great. I think we all agreed was the best part of that movie. Maybe
it's kind of the best part of the movie. Yes.
Right.
But yeah, he's a surprise, but I enjoyed him. I just think this movie's kind of loaded with those guys like Jürgen Prochnow one, but like David Warner, John Glover,
Bernie Casey.
Bernie Casey. You know, these guys are just going to give you a couple, fun, wild scenes.
You also have what's his name? Wilhelm von. Let me get his name right here. But
Wilhelm von Homburg,
right? Who is Vigo the Carpathian in Ghostbusters 2? Right, and is one of the henchmen in Die Hard. Was a former boxer and is another guy who just like is so unbelievably intense on screen at any given moment. He's the guy who shoots himself in the bar at the end. Right.
Yeah, and he was dropping knowledge on our poor John Trent character played by Sam Neill, and yet
this is just, it's an arc that I love so much. The guy who's all swagger, who knows what he's doing, is unflappable. Someone tries to murder him with an axe 20 minutes into this movie, and he's like a little miffed, but he, dusts himself off and gets back to his day.
But also his setup is he like busts bullshit for a living and he's the best at it. This guy fucking sees through everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He knows if you're cheating on your wife, he thinks everyone is full of shit. He's obviously the plot is that he's investigating this author of what's the author's name?
Sutter Cane.
Sutter Cane,
baby.
Read his work. Who is his work is supposedly driving people mad, and he assumes that this is a ploy by the publishers to just gin up some publicity, but he's going to look into it. But I just love the sort of like, big dick guy gets thrown into a world like a nightmare world beyond his his greatest fears. Like the whole journey into the unknown thing in this movie is so well represented. Like the creepiness of their drive up and the weird shit that they see and the way it like goes from day to night and all. I love that all so much.
I dramatically love movies about people having their perception of the world destroyed, right? Like in any like comedically in action movies and horror movies or anything where you have this sort of like super high functioning, unflappable character played by some degree of movie star who slowly realize that they have no idea what the fuck is going on and they have no control over their universe. There is nothing I find more effective in horror than am I losing my mind or am I the only sane person trope. It's because it is the thing that scares me the most personally, with my tenuous grasp on my own mental health at all times. Anything that's playing with that juice of am I the only person who knows what's actually going on anymore, or am I slowly breaking down?
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up because that was something that was really on my mind watching it today. I watched it earlier in the morning, which is a funny thing to like get up before dawn and watch In the Mouth of Madness. But you know what? That's a great start to your day because you're starting.
You did it for us, and I appreciate that.
We did a cup of coffee and Mouth of Madness.
Yeah, I was like, let me get my tea and watch Sam Neill lose his mind and think about my own not strong grip on my own sanity.
Same.
Throughout this miniseries, I've been watching Carpenter really early in the morning, almost consistently.
I love it.
And it has been kind of it's an interesting way to start your day, for sure.
Rise and Carp.
Yeah, rice and carp. Yep.
But, you know, my whole thing is, as someone who is bipolar and has anxiety and has been in a few mental hospitals, I'm like usually hypersensitive to depictions of madness, especially in
Same.
horror.
Yeah.
And not because I need it to necessarily look like reality. I'm not interested in that sort of realism necessarily, but I want it to be able to at least get across that feeling of, you know, psychosis. Like, I've been in moments where I really thought I was losing my mind. And I feel this film gets it.
I agree. I think probably historically the movies I have hated the most on this show or had the strongest adverse reactions to are ones where I get really upset over depictions of mental stuff. And I agree with you that it's more about I want there to be some sort of aesthetic truth.
Yes,
to it.
aesthetic and emotional truth.
Right, an aesthetic truth, yeah. Which I think this movie gets very well, yeah.
Yeah.
Because like the depiction of the asylum in this movie is obviously sort of like hilariously stereotypical, right? He's like thrown in a padded cell. It's all very
John
like,
Glover is giving a performance that is more over the top than his performance in Batman and Robin.
Exactly. His hair's sticking up and he's like, another one, you know, like, and yet, like you say, right, there is sort of, I mean, Carpenter is a very empathetic filmmaker. He always has been. So, like, that's why he's, not that I don't mind trashy genre director, but like, you know, that's why he's on another level. Like
that's my other thing too, obviously, is when it comes to depictions of mental illness, of like easy demonization versus some sense of empathy. And I think you can tell from the way this movie starts of just like, here he is, his face is down, he's kicking and screaming, he's knocking a guy in the nuts, right? Like he's playing stereotypical, especially sort of like Val Lewton institutional horror movie, quote unquote crazy person, right? And then the second David Warner goes back to privately talk to him, now he lifts his head up. Now you're looking this guy in the eyes for the first time. He's a real person, right? He's not just a lunatic. Yeah. You're having to actually have a conversation with this guy and engage with him and question whether you could so easily put him into that box. And very notably, once this conversation starts, he gets very quiet. He gets very focused, you know?
Yeah.
You know, he is not behaving like a maniac. He's sort of, you know, there's a mild twitchiness to him. There is that manic energy, but he is really locking in with David Warner and sort of knowing, like, I've been through this. You're probably going to think I'm crazy. Let me just tell you what I've gone through. But that central balance of the thing, of just like how people see you, your awareness of how people see you. Are you doing this on purpose? Have you given up trying to maintain some sense of control of how you're perceived in society versus just like, here's this guy, he's fucking broken, you know? And he's like excited that someone, not excited, but, you know, willing to open up to someone to see if he can break through to them. But there's also this guardedness of just like, it's probably done. I don't assume anyone's really going to buy what I have to say.
Yeah, he's covered in plus signs. Like,
he's very positive, is what you're saying, Ben.
He's
covered
positive
in plus
guy.
signs.
All positive energy. Then you go to the story within the story. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ding dong, ding dong, ding dong, ding dong. David.
It's not a phone ringing. It's bells a ringing.
The bells are a ringing. David.
Yes.
'Tis the season.
Ah, 'tis the season. The holiday
of
season.
Giving.
The
holiday season of giving. Because it's been a long, hard 18 months. Sounds like someone's been taking Blue Chew. And comfort is what we all crave.
I do crave some comfort. Yeah, that's true.
What we're talking about now, David?
Yeah.
Is that might be time to give the gift of comfort with Brooklyn in this holiday season.
Interesting. What is the best gift if not the gift of comfort, after all? The hug in a blanket form. There's, you know, a weighted blanket or a whole spa day wrapped around your body. I'm talking about Brooklyn robes.
Those robes. Oof.
Brooklyn has got options for everyone on your list. And if you're looking for ways to stay cozy, check out Brooklyn's candles, its eye masks, and accessories.
It's lovely.
It's Brooklyn and rules. They got the gifts for everyone and every budget. You can go big with super plush towels and luxe bedding for a family. Or you can get your best friend's neighbor a puzzle when they host that holiday party you have to go to. Yeah,
those
they have
puzzles are probably so soft and comfortable.
Yeah, I should hope so. Feels so good on the fingers. There's literally something for everyone. Brooklynin's goal is to create beautiful, high-quality home essentials that don't cost an arm and a leg. We love them. We know them well. It's a perfect place to find the best gift. And, Griff, their customer service, they're clearly getting 8 hours every night because they're a dream to work with if you ever have an issue. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Now,
They got a... What? No, what are you going to say?
Well, I
what
was
are you
just
going to say?
Brooklyn gave us the opportunity to give a gift to a pal.
Okay. Thank you. I was going to bring this up.
I sent a candle to my friend Caroline Framke, friend of the show, past and future guest.
Friend of the show.
And so, I mean, I felt that, I've gotten into the spirit of giving. Framke bought me a candle long ago once, so I was finally able to return the favor. But they've got all kinds of products, Griffin. I don't know what you've been doing.
No, that's nice, and I'm not jealous, but I did text you, and I said, hey, wouldn't it be funny if we got each other presents from Brooklyn, and wouldn't that be a sweet, kind thing?
Yeah.
And you went, haha, yes, funny, I did already send Frankie a candle.
You can still buy me a candle, just with your own money.
I don't know, but then, I mean, I know, it's just... I feel a little left out of the Brooklyn gifting season.
Well, there's still plenty of time because holiday season is just churning up, and you can check out the gift guide to find the perfect present at every price point. Go to brooklinen.com and use promo code BlankCheck to get $20 off with a minimum purchase of $100. That's BROOKLINEN.com and enter promo code BlankCheck for $20 off your first order. Plus, that's brooklinen.com promo code BlankCheck. Easy.
Guess I just need to find someone to gift 3 large silk scrunchies.
Yeah, you should. So you're introduced to Sam Neill. Obviously, we talked about that, his sort of big swinging energy and all that. But I know it's partly that the movie had a smaller budget and they had to deploy the sort of nightmarish imagery carefully and quickly and kind of subtly. Like, they could not linger on it for too long.
It's $10 million. Memoirs was 40. His movies before that were all closer to 3.
Smaller.
That run he had.
Right, but we're in the mid-90s now.
It's changed.
Right, yeah.
Not only have budgets changed, but standards have changed.
Yeah.
But like, I just like how he's folding in the nightmarish stuff very sort of like obliquely and like not trying to explain anything at all. The guy's weird eyes, the cop that he has the vision of being like this monster and all that. Like, no effort to really explain beyond. Like, I like all of the early buildup in this movie. It keeps me so interested.
Yeah,
I appreciate that. I guess the opening of the movie is so kind of, amped up that's supposed to hook us. But like, I just like that Carpenter always takes his time before getting to the bananas stuff. Like,
Totally.
Carpenter really is sort of like, the third act is where it's going to go bananas. Like, don't worry. Like, I'll give you what you want later. Like, but like, please stay with me while I get you involved.
They said that was the main reason DeLuca was so fixated on getting him to direct this movie over 5 years, is that like no one gets away with more through the power of suggestion than this guy. People in their mind's eye always think that Carpenter shows a lot more than he does, and that he really saves the big visuals, the sort of chaos for the third act, but he's able to dole things out slowly and methodically enough that it does keep you hooked in.
And so once this little group goes on a road trip, the road trip is sort of my favorite part of the movie. Is that, Griff, is Hayden Christensen the boy on the bike?
At the end.
Yeah.
At the end,
Yeah.
okay, because I love that boy on the bike in the middle who's like turns into a weird old man.
Yeah. Oh my God, that is so scary to me for some reason.
It's so scary.
Yeah, it really is.
I think that's Kevin Zegers, maybe?
I think it might be.
Yeah.
I know he's in it too. It's Kevin Zegers, whatever.
Kevin
his name is,
Zegers,
that guy.
whatever his name is, yes. But Hayden's definitely the one at the end.
Real quick, though, we skipped over, there's that brief moment before they go on the road trip where they're in the elevator bank and he's hitting on her really hard. That is so creepy. He is so horny and creepy in that scene.
I mean, he's a dang-ass freak.
He's
We
Yeah.
keep on
He
coming
is.
back to the central point here.
Yeah.
If
And
he's ever on a space station, be careful. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and he's obviously like, he's not just hitting on her, he's also trying to get information from her. So it's like, it's kind of a weird mix of impulses on his part. I thought it was kind of hot though. Yeah.
I mean, he is pretty obsessed with power and control, right? I mean, he's a guy who is sort of methodically fixated on making sure that no one has the better of him. And wants to have that upper hand on everyone around him, but also wants to control how people feel about him and can manipulate his own charisma to get what he wants out of other people. Is this talking about this as like a fucking trope, but like the whatchamacallit, Edge of Tomorrow is like another movie that does the same thing, where it's like, here's a guy who's so good at fucking talking and lying to people. And being able to like get in a boardroom and spin things however he wants, and then he's just thrown to a universe where he does not understand anything anymore, and is completely falling apart at the lack of power he wields.
Yeah, and this film really is broadly also about control, because isn't that sanity in a way? The idea that you think you have some control over how you view reality, and you're in touch with whatever, quote unquote reality is.
And I think beyond that, how other people see you. It's both.
Exactly.
My understanding of reality and my understanding of how I'm perceived.
Exactly. Which is just super fascinating, kind of, watching Sam Neill fall apart in the film, because it kind of leads to really interesting considerations about what is real. How are we actually probably improperly perceiving the world around us? What are we missing? What's behind the veil ideas? It gets me hot. I love it.
Well, that scene where they go to the hotel and he's arguing with Styles about reality, because she's calling out like, look, this is the town. This is the town from the book. There's the church, all of this. And he does that thing where he knocks on the desk and goes like, reality. This is reality. Right. Hear this? With the irony being, he's knocking on a desk in a town from a book. Like, his argument is, real things are tangible things that I can hit, that I can prove, that I can touch, that are tactile. But it's like, but you're saying this in a fantasy world right now. You are already trapped in the thing that isn't real. And your perception of this disc is more real than what you're saying to me is already totally out of whack.
Like, would you... the Sam Neill, like his performance, like just his whole entitled, King of the Universe vibe. That's what I love about like the hubris of it, where he's just like, no, I figured the puzzle out. It's not what you guys are trying to sell me on. It's just a weird old town, and I figure, as I always do, am gonna pierce, the lie here and emerge the number one smarty pants once again. Like there's so much delight. It's kind of like, when you're watching a bunch of camp counselors have sex and you're like, Jason's gonna get these guys, like that same hubris where the audience is kind of rooting for the villainy, but just in this more elaborate, supernatural, metaphorical way. I love that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
it's great. This movie rules. And then everything goes insane. Everything goes completely wild.
Another thing that rules is the cutout stuff, where they figure out it's New Hampshire. I love that shit.
You like the map?
Yeah.
I do too. It's like, look at this. It's really like solidifying, this is one smart bitch. Okay, this insurance investigator, he can figure shit the fuck out. And so you kind of go into this weird town and story with that in mind. Like, this is someone who thinks he can kind of perceive things that others don't, and kind of look through the bullshit and put the puzzle pieces together. But what if the puzzle comes together and it's an image you can't even, comprehend?
A pretty ingenious storytelling decision in this movie is that he is asleep and Styles is driving the car when they go through the tunnel and shit starts getting really fucking weird. So he doesn't see that nightmarish imagery. She enters the town and sees that sign already fairly broken. So that when he's now seeing, that's weird, this town's supposed to not exist. I talked to the old lady at the front desk of the hotel. She's never heard of Sutter Cane. He has no reason to question reality at this point. She's viewing it through the prism of weird shit has already happened. And he just immediately goes to, this is absolutely a promotional event. I mean, I just love that he's so confident that it's like, this is some weird fucking augmented reality launch for the book that you fuckers are doing. These people are cosplaying, they're acting.
Yeah.
Right. And he just hasn't seen the sort of tears at the edges of reality yet.
Yeah, and even when he does start to see them, it takes a little bit. It has to heighten to a certain level for him to be like, okay, wait a minute. Like, the fuck is this? Especially with the old lady. And like, you know, him coming downstairs and like looking at the painting has changed, which is so effectively creepy to me. Like, if I kept turning around and a painting was just changing and people were mutating in the painting, I would just be like, you know what, fuck it. This is the point where I either try to get out of this town or I need to kill myself because this ain't going to work out for me. I don't want to look like some hideous creep.
And to me, well, you don't want to look like a hideous. No one wants to look like a hideous creep. But to me, I love that scene is not really in this movie, but like, you know, I guess it sort of is. But like, if he gets in his car and tries to drive through the covered bridge again and just can't leave, that is such a good ultimate nightmare to me, right? Where you're like, nope,
the thing from
you
Old,
cross the barrier and there's no way back, right?
Right.
Yeah,
if you try to walk back through the cave in Old, you just get a headache and you wake up back on the beach again.
Ooh.
What was the thing I was going to say? Another thing I think this movie does very smartly is the case that he is telling Bernie Casey about at the beginning is like, you know, husband hires me to spy on wife who he thinks is having an affair with him, and then I realize they're both running a con on me. So you know this guy is very dubious of the fact that I don't necessarily even trust who hires me to do this. Right? They could just as likely be in on it. They're not trying to get me to solve a problem for them. They might be looping me into their sham. So, you know, he gets brought in with Charlton Heston and with Styles and whatever. The whole time he's wary of like, this would be a pretty perfect way to promote the new book. That the guy goes missing, that there's some mystery around it, right? I wake up, I'm now in a town that's named after the town from the book. Look, they've built the church, all of this. He's just like, anything weird that starts happening, it is so easy for him in his arrogance to write it off as, well, I don't know, this is what the fucking publishing company's doing.
Built a church, though.
I know.
It's wild.
For promotional purposes, I'm not sure they would take it that far.
It's his arrogance that he's willing to accept any of it is their shit. So if the painting changes, he's like, would be a perfect thing for a publishing house to do. Change the paintings.
Yeah, and he touched the painting when he realized it had changed to kind of see if there was fresh paint. I'm like, dude, come on now. Like, think about it. Also, you know, everything with the old lady and like her poor husband shackled to her ankle, and then her, like, you don't, obviously with all the monstrous things in the film, you don't see them directly, but you kind of see her in shadow and the tentacles really, all that sort of shit.
Tentacles roll.
It's so effectively gross to me. Like, I'm like, what the fuck?
And all of it has the same kind of like sliminess as the Thing animatronics. He's working with the same color palette as well, where everything's this odd sort of like bruised flesh. It's very scary. It's very scary. But yeah, like in that scene where they're arguing about reality and he's knocking on the desk and she admits to him like, okay, 20% of this was a scam.
Right, that's my favorite part. She's
only
like, yeah, okay, you had the basic idea right. Sure, we were making up the whole crazy people thing, a little bit, you know, but I did not plan any of this. Like, what do you think I am? Like,
right, we wanted him to disappear, but then we actually can't find him. The agent wasn't supposed to go crazy, you know, like all this shit. But even her admitting that like the last 80% of this has been really fucking real and is scaring me only like confirms his bias even more to be less trusting.
Yeah. And this is obviously a character so committed to their own view of the world and their centrality in the world that it's like, for me, even the beginning, the agent and the weird eyes and the axe, like, come on, like, that's already like, what the fuck? That motherfucker got shot. He's dead. That's not promotional.
Right.
No.
Right, but he's so unfazed by it, and everyone around him is like, don't you think that's weird that you happen to be the guy sitting at the window of this restaurant when a dude comes in with an axe and tries to murder you, and then you get hired to work for his publishing company?
And, you know,
find the guy. Yeah.
Not to sound like Griffin, but
please.
That's how it speaks so well to the current moment where it's like,
sounds like Griff.
You know, everything is sort of quietly so skewed and strange. and society seems to be crumbling. But the way to get through it for so many people is just to be like, I don't know, things seem normal mostly. So I guess I'll just sort of ignore the weird stuff, right? Like that's the only way to make it through the day. And like that's why this is such a good depiction of apocalypse, and such a good current depiction of apocalypse.
I love that all the early looks of sort of affected people are different too. Like someone like the agent is like, okay, this looks like someone, you know, who's in like the grip of psychosis, you know, hasn't slept, is not taking care of themselves. And some people look like they are, you know, have been infected with a zombie virus. You have people bleeding out of their eyes. Like there's a range of, I don't know, of visual triggers of people who are in some way being touched by this thing, so that it's all just generally disorienting.
Well, one thought I was having about the people, right, who are possessed, they have to have read the books, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like I know the kind of audiences that read those paperbacks, and I feel like way more people should have looked like they were on vacation. Do you know what I mean? Like, it should have been more like retired people. Do you know what I'm saying? That was like, I feel like one misstep.
You're saying the biggest outbreak should be happening at the airport.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or just, and like beach towns. That to me feels like the vibe.
But I mean, Sutter Cane's bigger than Stephen King, so I mean, I think just like everybody is reading his shit.
Right.
Like he's that bitch.
He's bigger than the Holy Bible.
It is funny that they mention Stephen King. They actually neg him a little bit.
It's a successful version of the Studio 60 thing.
The Studio 60 insisting that SNL also exists. Yes.
Right. In this one, it works as you're like, oh, fuck, he's bigger than that. And Studio 60, they're like, yeah, we keep on getting beaten by SNL in the ratings. It's like, beaten? Motherfucker, you'd be canceled. This show's not still on the
exist.
air.
There's only room for one of these dumb things. There's definitely not room for two. It's because like it'd be one thing if Studio 60 was like about making a Mad TV style show where it's like, yeah, this is a piece of shit. What? We're all idiots. But Studio 60, they all act like they... I know, but in Studio 60, they all acted like they invented humor. Like they're all pulling down like leather-bound books and talking about like commedia dell'arte and shit.
Right.
Like the whole thing is, you know, shot by fucking. Looks like, you know, Janusz Kaminski is like, you know, it's ridiculous. That show is so up its own ass.
Blowing
it's
the
so funny.
Dust off of vinyl records of cavemen doing the first Who's on First routine.
I truly am dreading the Aaron Sorkin I Love Lucy thing, because it's going to be the same.
Right.
It's going to be monologues about how important it is that they are making comedy that people see or something, right? Like it's just going to be so much of that. I have to imagine.
I think it's going to be the best horror film of 2021. I'm maybe in the opposite boat from you in that I'm eagerly anticipating it, but with a sort of like gleeful menace.
Yeah, Sorkin is just. I am not on Sorkin's wavelength.
I love him when I love him. This feels like a horrible match
Terrible
match. Subject.
I agree.
For him, and I also think the casting is fully demented.
Yeah, that's going to be a clunker.
I just keep imagining Javier Bardem playing Desi Arnaz like as Salazar from Pirates of the Caribbean. Okay.
Oh my
Angelica.
God.
Angelica, please take us back on topic or say whatever. Say anything. Say anything at all, honestly.
What the fuck are you... Where the fuck is this road going? But I wanted to kind of go back to something about like the effective use of like different people who become sort of possessed and start changing. I think one of the most striking examples is one of those little kids when Styles is like going to the black church and she turns around because the ball kind of hits her ankles and she sees these little gross looking kids around her car. And the one who talks has like these really fucked up pointy teeth and blood covering her mouth and says something like, "It's mommy's day." Like, bitch, get the fuck away from me, okay? See? Kids. Fuck them kids.
Love that freaky little kid. Love that the other kids aren't fucked up looking. They're just kids, but you kind of think they're all fucked up looking because of it. You know what I mean? You're like, kids are weird looking.
Yeah, they can be.
Yeah.
Some children are ugly also, and we need to be honest about that. Some
we need to
babies
tell
are
them.
not cute.
We
have to tell them.
Right. My baby is cute, and I know that she's cute because some babies are not cute. And that is something we have to talk about.
There's also, I mean, there's another reason we know your baby is cute.
Why?
Because she looks like the Boss Baby, and the Boss Baby was cute enough to sell movie tickets.
Yeah, there you go.
Angelica, his baby looks just like the Boss Baby.
Okay.
He says my baby looks like the Boss Baby.
I'll send you a picture privately. I'll have you respond live on air. I look, David, you brush it off, but every single person who meets her goes like, it is true. She looks like the Boss Baby.
She's a baby. She's a white
baby.
baby
She looks
with a round head. She looks like the Boss Baby.
She looks exactly like the Boss Baby, more so than any other baby looks like the Boss Baby.
All right.
I'm so eagerly anticipating seeing this real life Boss Baby. But let's go back to In the Mouth of Madness's greatness.
But
yes, please.
What you're saying is true, and the same with the old lady with her husband tied to her, handcuffed to her ankle. Like, just weaponizing small town cuteness and making it the creepiest thing in the world is always going to work on me. Like, I love the menace of, a bread and breakfast town, basically.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
What else is going on in Hobbs End?
Too much. It just seems like a mess. I know we sort of alluded to this earlier, but when Sam Neill is trying to escape and is able to, get into the car, and like keeps trying to escape and going over the bridge, but then he ends up right back in front of the town's mutated townspeople. I would be so annoyed. I mean, he did that a few times. I would be like, you know what?
Annoying.
Okay, can you just move me on to some other part of the story, Sutter Cane? Because fuck this shit. Yeah, I'm just, this movie, every time I watch it, I kind of discover something new or kind of hone in on a different aspect. And one thing I really dug about it, especially after seeing a not good horror movie soon after at a press screening, is its texture. It's so textured visually. There's like the slimy drippiness of the monsters and tentacles that you see, but then there's also like the cracked skin of certain other characters. The softness of the padded cell. It just feels so dynamic in terms of texture visually that even more brings you into this world in a really fascinating way.
Hard agree.
Movies often look very flat now.
They do. Too glossy too.
Very glossy. I appreciate that you can make a cheap movie these days and get it online and people can watch it, and I know there's advantages to that, but I do often feel like they have this kind of anonymous flatness to them that can be a little depressing. And yeah, man, this is a fucking rich movie, like, visually. I miss it.
I miss it too.
Did you see the fucking trailer for the new Home Alone, Griff?
Yes, I did.
Home Sweet Home Alone or whatever it's called.
Yes.
The Disney Plus Home Alone. Angelica, let me tell you, the premise is they leave the kid home alone and some burglars come. It's the exact same thing. But the thing about it is it's got that kind of flatness that you the sort of straight to streaming flatness. And then you think about Home Alone, which is like, that's a movie that it's a Chris Columbus movie that was really just kind of like a down the middle kind of family movie. And now you watch that and you're like, God, it looks so good. Like the grain on this is beautiful. Like
it looks like Lawrence of Arabia now.
Fallen.
It is bizarre. Yes.
Oh, it has texture and again, like practical. It's beautiful.
Yes.
The weather looks great. The location filming is great. Anyway, that's how sick things have gotten. That's all.
Okay, now Angelica's laughing because I sent into the private chat a picture of the Boss Baby, but that's for comparison. Okay.
I was like, this is just the Boss Baby. Is his child a cartoon?
The Boss Baby. My child is not a cartoon. She's flesh and blood.
She is. I will give her that. I will give her that. Now, hold on one second. I'm sending the second photo here. Give me one moment. It is absurd though, and it's like, I don't know. Especially considering how cheap most Carpenter movies were.
Exactly.
It is amazing how much he just understood how to get the most out of images,
Totally. I mean, visually dynamic in terms of framing, how characters are blocked. I mean, it's just every level visually is just kind of firing on all cylinders, especially here. And, one of my favorite moments comes in the end visually and is the background of both of y'all's Zoom, where, it's ripped pages from what we can assume is Sutter Cane's manuscript. And it's like Sutter Cane rips himself apart, and then that reveals like, oh, these are pages, and it's almost like he's opening it up to this other world, and you don't even see what Sam Neill is looking at through this torn sort of, it almost looks like a cave opening in a weird way, and you don't know what he sees, but you see his facial expression, and you're like, oh yeah, we're in for some shit, y'all.
That's that Lovecraft magic where it's like, it's better to see how it makes someone look at something than just show it. Like, you're going to get more out of their reaction. And the shot you're talking about, the ripped page thing, that's just classic Carpenter. I feel like where he's like, when I'm going to deploy visual effects, I'm going to make sure. Oh, there
what
she
a
is.
Cute baby. They do look like Boss Baby.
Thank you.
Oh, little Boss Baby.
I will, Griff. I will
Timed out
say
perfectly,
you got
David. I got the right comparison, did I not?
Well, you got her in a Boss Baby pose. She's on her.
I didn't get her in that pose. You got her in that pose, and I've just saved it.
She
it
gets
helps my
herself in
argument.
that pose. You put her on her back. She rolls onto her tummy in 1 second.
Can we also
Anyway.
say how well that timed out? That Angelica responding to how much your daughter looks like the Boss Baby coincided with
As
you
I
saying
talk about
how much more effective it is
Lovecraftian
to
horror.
see. No, how much more effective it is to see someone react to seeing something.
Yeah, totally.
Yes,
and
yes.
that's something I'm hyper aware of watching newer horror films where, they have these mostly CGI monsters, and it's just like ugly. It's not engaging visually, and it's better a lot. You guys are right. It's better a lot of times to not see something fully and let the audience's imagination sort of fill in the blanks, because what they can fill in the blanks with is personally scary to them, so it's more effective.
What is most wild to me is that Carpenter, like, you read the interviews at the time, sort of bemoaned the fact that he couldn't use CGI, because this is post-Jurassic Park and T2, and he was like, yeah, the budget isn't big enough, so I'm back to using rubber again. Like, he was sort of very dismissive of it. And, outside of like those two examples and some other very, very high level cutting edge movies, so many of the movies, the 90s films without massive budgets that use CGI, it has aged just so horribly. Like, they did not have the skill and the artistry to know how to execute it. And this movie has one big CGI effect, I would say, which is when like Sutter Cane starts ripping himself. And it is so effective and it is so scary. It's clearly a very simple, cheap trick. But the fact that that's the one thing that is digital rather than practical, and it is an effect that feels like you are ripping at the seams of reality, like you are tearing the movie in half. You transition from that into the more practical thing that we both have as the background of like the pages and Sam Neill walking into it and whatever. But I find that image so scary to like see a man sort of like cut the fabric of time and space around him and just start peeling it back.
Yeah, and then I really like how you see Sutter Cane a little bit later in one of Sam Neill's dreams after he's able to quote unquote, well, he doesn't really escape the town. He's more like let out.
Right.
So he can bring Sutter Cane's manuscript to the rest of the world, and starting with his publishing company. But I love that moment between Sutter Cane and John Trent on the bus, and Sutter Cane's whole, I'm God now. I'm like, every writer wants to be able to say that. Like, why, yes, my creations are real, and I am God now.
Yeah.
And then when he like thinks he's like, did I ever tell you my favorite color was blue? And he thinks he wakes up, and then the hair of the old woman sitting next to him, everything everybody's wearing, the way the light is
blue filter, right? It's like, yeah.
Ooh, yeah. And then he wakes up again, and then he's screaming on the bus, which is probably what I would do.
Absolutely. Well, and it's such a scary concept that it's like this guy can just keep on popping up in your head and going like, rewrite, I've decided to add this, and your reality is that quickly changed around you. Or is it? Like, you wake up the second time and you're like, well, now I don't fucking know what to make of anything. I probably prefer The Thing to this, but I feel like The Thing gets so much credit for how bleak its ending is. When people talk about that movie, this feels to me like far and away the bleakest ending he's ever had in any of his films.
I think that's why I like it so much.
It is insane how relentless the last 25 minutes of this movie are, because you have this sort of, he breaks through the page, the town is letting him free, right? And we're used to either in movies like this, everything returns to some state of normalcy, and at the end there's some like shrug, look to the camera question of like, or is it? Or the guy actually finds a way to defeat the thing, right? And in this, it's like, no, as you said, they sort of just let him go, but he infects everyone with him, and things just get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And then you cut back to him in the cell explaining all of this to David Warner, and it's like, yeah, well, you're right, that is a pretty bad story. And then things get worse. They get worse out of the story he's telling.
Right. Yeah. And he's just like, yeah, so is the world ended yet? And David Warner's like, I don't want to talk about it. Let's get back to you.
And then like the fucking hospital blows up. He wanders the streets like I Am Legend. He goes to watch his own movie.
And he's like, right, I am a character in a fictional universe. And he laughs because, yeah, how could you not do the best ending of all time? I mean, that's the best ending imaginable.
It's incredible.
Yeah, it's an incredible ending.
The blue scare is so good. I just want to it's so simple. It's sort of Lynchian, like exactly. Where it's just like one unsettling thing is all you need to do to completely discombobulate the audience. It's so good.
Yeah, like I think this movie obviously is really good at the like super weird shit, tentacles, whatever. But there's also like just really simple scares that just kind of cut through everything and leave a chill in your fucking bones.
I mean, the old lady at the front desk with her husband shackled to her is it may be the image that lingers with me the most, and is not graphic, it is not gory, but it's just so bizarre. It is like Lynchian, and it's upsetting, and there's something unnerving to how casual she is about it.
Yeah, and just kicking him.
Right. Her conversation with Sam Neill before that, her temperament is so weird because they've established her as this sort of like, archetypal nice old lady in a small town. And then she starts like cursing at Sam Neill, right? Like saying like, I don't know, some shit or whatever.
Yeah, because he, I think, asked if she did the painting, and she's like, hell no. And I'm like, okay, old lady.
Right. And then she's like, oh, her husband's just suffering by her side? Like, yeah. Shackled together.
Weird. A lot of the town, everything in Hobbs End is very effective with, something David said earlier with regards to using a small town and then sort of, moving things a few spaces to the left. Like even when they first arrive, there's like no one around.
Which is creepy.
There's no one. It's empty streets except for when she sees the kids. And then doesn't see the kids, which is another super creepy thing. Like, okay, what? Destabilizing.
He pulls that trick so many times, and it always works. Where it's like she looks out the car window for a second, and they're like in the sky, and she's like, "Huh?" And she looks again, and they're not. Like that always works. The kid with the, like we said, the kid on the bike who turns into an old man. He's got the weird Joker cards and the spokes, like. That the focus on the little details like that's awesome. And then I mean the buildup in this movie is so cool, and then it delivers like you're like, okay, but it actually better be unsettling when you finally peel back the veil, right? Like when you get to the mouth of madness, and he pulls that off too.
His lair rules.
Oh yeah,
he's got a good lair.
That red lair, like that writing room of his, would like. David, you guys, Angelica, as writers, would you want to work in that kind of room, in that kind of space? Would that be helpful?
I mean,
for you?
I do have a typewriter, so I like to fix typewriters. So
if you kind of just had a lava vibe.
Yeah, I love that. Maybe I'll get a lava lamp and sort of approximate that sort of
Okay.
vibe. Put blood on my walls or whatever the hell else he was doing up in there.
I was very envious of him, like quickly typing out a page and being like, finished. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, all right. Okay.
I was like, fuck you, dude. I definitely ain't writing like that. That actually brings up something that only popped into my head this watch, which was, having a character reading a book is usually boring as shit, right? And so, like, the way this movie kind of approaches the reading by having, like, Sam Neill fall asleep and then, like, it's almost like what he's reading infects his mind and, like, his perspective. Like, when he kept having the dream of, seeing the alleyway, the cop turns around, face gnarled. But I was like, that's a smart way of, like, getting across the vibe of the book without, hearing voiceover of Sam Neill reading what Sutter Cane wrote. Although we do hear Styles at one point reading from a passage, which worked, though.
I'm confused, Angelica. Are you saying that Nocturnal Animals is not a compelling structure for a movie? To have a 2-hour film where a woman reads a book and every 15 minutes puts the book down,
movie.
calls someone, gets their voicemail, goes back to reading the book, takes a bath, reads the book some more, thinks about some other shit.
I legit forgot about that movie existed.
Of course you did.
And I've seen it. I've seen it before. I went to a press screening. I remember seeing this.
I saw that shit.
It's self-defense. We all had to forget about that movie.
I just
we can't have
always,
it in our head.
every 4 months, I think, did he really do that? Is the movie really just her reading the book? And then she like goes, ooh, what a bad chapter. Well, back to reading.
Does she read it out loud?
No.
What? You just watch her read?
Yeah, and then you see the book, and then you also see some other memories she's having.
Don't watch it. It's just...
No, I'm not to. I was just like, they just show her reading for like 5 minutes.
Yeah, and then like her cannibal husband comes home, and he's like, how are you doing? And she's like, okay, I'm reading this book.
And it's like back to the other parallel storyline, which is the book. It's so That's why I'm like, this movie is smart about what it needs to get across with understanding who Sutter Cane is and how his work looms large over the world.
And it doesn't need to do like a fucking 10-minute sequence where you see one of the books acted out. Like, you understand the hallmarks you need to understand without them having to spend that much time.
Exactly. Which
good.
I think it's just good shit. I feel like this is our takeaways. Good shit. Good shit.
This is good shit. Yeah.
It's just like, and it's also just so much fun to feel like challenged by a movie that's not necessarily like trying to be some super highbrow, whatever the fuck that even means these days, piece of work. It's just, it's kind of luring you into something. It's challenging what you think is real. It's fucking with your brain a little bit. And then it ends bleak as hell as a reminder of, hey, the world sucks. It's all going to shit.
It's the drag me to hell thing that I love.
Ooh,
where it's like
that's
you're fulfilling the promise on the can. This movie is about like the fucking apocalypse and reality tearing apart. They're gonna fucking do it. They're gonna show you exactly what they say the thread of the movie is.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like, drag me to hell. Wow, good ending. Good endings are hard to like. It's especially with genre work sometimes, like, you remember a lot of other things from a work, but maybe not its ending. But Carpenter has some really dope endings as a filmmaker.
You're right. Yeah, he kind of is the ending killer. Yeah, the fog ending rules. Obviously, The Thing has a very famous ending.
Even Prince of Darkness, I like the ending.
Escape from New York is such a fucking
him just
cool
walking
ending.
off.
He gets out so quickly. Right, that's the other thing.
Same with Big Trouble in Little China, where he's like, I'm not going to kiss you, and then he leaves, and he's got a monster in his truck. They Live. What's the ending of They Live?
They Live ends with the fucking alien couple fucking.
Yes.
It's the alien titty,
right.
so
and
that's
then, like,
great.
Yeah, what are you looking at? Yeah.
Oh my God, if that happened to me, Lord Jesus have mercy. I don't know how I would react.
I don't know. That's maybe the kind of freaky shit I'm into.
Oh,
Maybe I'm working through it.
Alien sex.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. It's just a bunch of he's a punchy. It's his sort of Howard Hawksy thing, right? He's like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to let send the audience out unsatisfied. Like I'm an old fashioned filmmaker. I want to nail it. And this might be my favorite of his endings, though. Like, I just love the whole recursive.
It's one of the best endings ever. Yeah, same here.
Yeah. It's funny because Vulture is a lot of packages got moved around that we do because of the pandemic and feeling like certain things wouldn't.
50 best type packages, like the sort of,
it was doing a really big package on best endings, and I remember
that came out.
Yeah, I think it eventually came out, but we were like in the conversations amongst the critics and other people at Vulture who were working on it. We were like, we'll only do like one ending from a filmmaker. We're not going to do multiple. Like, we can't list every Wilder ending or. And I was like, I know everybody wants, the thing for Carpenter, and I get it, but In the Mouth of Madness is like, to me, such an evocative gut punch of an ending. And then, Sam Neill laughing until he's crying just really gets across like, wow, this person is like truly and deeply fucked.
I wholeheartedly agree. I'm trying to find here, Angelica, because you were sort of even evoking this, but like the JJR researcher pulled up some quotes where Carpenter was just throwing shade at this idea of people trying to, and it's now what I feel like gets called elevated horror, and he had a different term here he used, but that even at this point in the 90s,
upscale horror is the term that Michael DeLuca
horror.
Yeah, so Michael DeLuca basically talked about, like, there's two kinds of horror films. There's the sort of low budget stuff that's more direct to video, and then there's a movie market for interesting high concept upscale horror films. He's talking about, at the time, Interview with the Vampire and Wolf, he's citing as examples, which is funny because, right, those are movies like Interview with the Vampire is kind of trying to be like an epic period drama. Wolf is sort of a satire. Like, they're not leading with horror.
No.
And they asked Carpenter about it, and he's like, that's a terrible word. Like,
right, I hate this. And he was just sort of like, I like monsters and aliens and shit. I don't feel the need to try to impress upon people that I'm doing it in a more serious way. I mean, he said, Carpenter, like, specifically invoked Coppola's Dracula as, like, that was sort of seen as maybe this is a transition point to horror being a slightly more legitimate genre, and that everyone was sort of trying to copy that for a while in the 90s, and it didn't really take hold. The fact that Wolf and Interviewing a Vampire are, like, the two things that DeLuca's throwing out there is, like, these are the two tracks of this.
Yeah, that's really fascinating hearing Carpenter's perspective on that, just because I feel like we're in a really weird time for horror where, the way horror is talked about is still strange, especially amongst critics. Like, I think there's a lot of critics who just don't fuck with horror, and it shows whenever they do a horror review.
Yeah.
But it's also like, I think sometimes I get this sense from certain filmmakers who are dipping into horror now that they're almost embarrassed they're doing horror, so they have to make things like trauma exploration like the guiding thrust of the work rather than, actually effectively scaring people and like getting under your skin and doing fascinating things visually. I don't know. I'm kind of depressed with modern horror from Hollywood.
It is very interesting to me that Carpenter was complaining about sort of the exact same things that are being debated right now, almost 30 years ago.
Because everything's cyclical. Like, I'm working on a really big piece, probably the biggest of my career, that will be out before the end of the year. And I'm not going to spoil what it's about.
It's about a big red dog, right?
Oh, totally.
The fact that you said big
dog
several times makes me think it has to be a clip.
But one thing it kind of led me to do was to read a lot of criticism from Black critics from, like, decades and decades prior. And I'm like, we're still talking about the same shit with representation, with colorism, with, Black filmmakers being used by the Hollywood system to give the veneer of progress. All these things are like so cyclical, and it's really, I think, important, to understand history in order to even understand the moment we're in. You know what I mean?
Thank you for reminding me of this thing that now is slightly on subject that I can bring up, that I was going down this rabbit hole last night and was pretty fascinated by. I was thinking, in another insomniac night, being tortured by my thoughts, unable to sleep, about Roosevelt Franklin, who was like a very early Sesame Street character, who was sort of like the early breakout character of that show, or at least one of them, and then got phased out by the 70s. He was maybe kind of the Elmo of his moment, where he was sort of the closer child analog character, and he was like a little boy with a striped shirt, and he had a little bit of a mischievous attitude. And Sesame Street was so specifically catered towards, like, we are trying to create a show that can promote literacy within inner city children who perhaps don't have the educational support that they need, right? Like, so Sesame Street was really designed to represent that kind of city and have that kind of diversity, and not just be a show for like small white children. And Franklin Roosevelt was supposed to sort of be like a black Muppet in theory, right? Is kind of coded that way, and most of his segments took place within his school. And I was reading articles written in like 1972 debating whether Franklin Roosevelt is a good stereotype or not. And they feel so similar to the types of things. Now, these articles were mostly being written by Black journalists in Black journals, right? But it's the kind of think pieces you see today. And then Fox News gets all fucking wound up and goes like, oh, so now they're saying that Cookie Monster has to be canceled. These people, where do they stop? And it's like, these debates have been going on forever. These same conversations always fucking happen. And people go, oh, so now we can't just enjoy things? Yeah. It's like an unending spectrum. It is bizarre just how much more upset people get now when things are debated.
Oh, totally. And I think that also, links to something that unsurprisingly is on my mind quite a bit, but people's discomfort with any sort of criticism that brings a strong intellectual, historical perspective. It's, people can't just enjoy things. That's why I'm off fucking Twitter, because I'm like, you know what?
Smart.
I can't.
It's not good.
It's not. And it's, you let so many other voices in your head, and I think that's actually not good for you creatively. Like, you can kind of lose your own voice amongst the masses.
Talk about in the mouth of madness, am I right?
I know. Yeah, that is basically Twitter. But, I think that having a critical perspective is really important. Like, you can, like, for example, with In the Mouth of Madness, can I just like watch it and just enjoy it just as a, piece of spectacle and horror on a more visceral level? Of course. But it also invites you to think about really fascinating subject matter, the nature of madness, the nature of reality, our own perspective on ourselves and others, and how other people look at us. I think those are all worthy subjects of consideration and thought. But also, the movie just rips. And I think it sucks that there's not more movies that I feel can work on both levels, both intellectually, viscerally, emotionally, visually. I think, In the Mouth of Madness is just really good at kind of firing from all cylinders in a way that you don't really see that much anymore, and especially, stateside I'm speaking of, and especially in horror.
Yeah, for sure.
This is, I'm just going to read this verbatim because it's really good. This is from a Film Threat interview, but people asking about commentary being put into his work, and whether this movie was ultimately, above all else, trying to be a statement on this idea of the cyclical nature of like art encouraging violence and yada, yada, yada. And he said, this is not a new thing. When I was a kid, and this gets back to also what we're fucking talking about, how about the same arguments are had cyclically over decades and people act like it's a new thing. So he says, this is not a new thing. When I was a kid watching television, there were these documentaries on TV asking, are foreign movies too violent? This is really not a satirical film, but it's based on the idea that Sutter Cane is being told what to write by these creatures from the beyond. And so when people read this stuff, they become possessed, paranoid schizophrenics, and run around killing people with axes. So in that sense, yeah, it is a take on the ridiculous premise that television, movies, and books can create killers. But most importantly, he says, Angelica, hopefully that isn't the first thing on people's minds. Hopefully you're screaming rather than thinking. Like, this is his whole thing, is he's always like, I'll tell you what's in my fucking mind while I'm making this movie. I have shit. I'm a deep thinker. I have things I want to say, but I'm not trying to make, like, polemic films. And primarily, my number one concern is I want to entertain people. I want to entertain people in the way that the movie is set up to entertain them. I want to fulfill the obligations of that genre. I want to give them the visceral excitement that they came for. And if they want to think about the shit, then fine, they can. The other quote I just want to read here. So this is from Fantastique, the French movie magazine from the year before this movie came out. And he's sort of talking about how earlier in his career he felt a need to prove to people that he wasn't just a horror guy. He was never embarrassed about being a horror filmmaker, but that he always, wanted to do westerns and dramas and seen as someone who had range. And his quote is, I love horror. I love science fiction. I had different kinds of dreams when I was younger, when I was trying to break into Hollywood. I wanted to direct westerns and action pictures. Then Halloween came along and gave me basically a career, and I struggled with it for a while, but I've come to understand what a gift it was and how wonderful it was. I'm extremely happy being John Carpenter. I enjoy it.
Aww,
That's
I
like
love that.
really sweet. And this
That
feels
is
like
sweet.
a movie made by a guy who's at that exact state in his life and comfort with himself.
And it is so good that he got over whatever, like so much of the sort of like, I want to be a studio guy, but I hate the studios, and like I don't want to just be the horror guy, but I'm clearly the master of horror. Like that he sort of came to some sort of self-awareness and self-respect. Now he just seems like the coolest.
I know.
He's like doing his music and just sort of like, giving these interviews where he like mouths off and has fun. And I don't know, like, doesn't he just sort of seem like a delightfully sort of like self-assured, settled guy? He's like, I made Halloween. Fuck you.
It's also funny how in that same interview where he's complaining about the idea of upscale horror, he's like, I don't know, Cronenberg says he doesn't want to do horror anymore. Like, he already in 1994 was like, this
like,
fucking
sheesh.
guy. Yeah.
I love that. I would love to smoke weed with Carpenter and play some video games.
I think
fucking
Angelica,
hell yeah.
That's the easiest thing to pitch him on, I think.
I know. That's why I'm like, hey, I'm always the friend who has weed and like in multiple forms. I'm like, hey, you want an edible? I got an edible.
You can bring
want
the
this vape
weed,
pen?
exactly.
I got this joint. And with Carpenter, it would work. Most of my friends do not smoke weed like I do, but it would work on him.
You should have like send out the official request through Vulture. Like, we are proposing a piece in which the two of you smoke weed and play video games, and if anything comes up, then cool. If not,
I would love to actually have a column at Vulture that's either like reassessing films while I'm blazed as fuck or interviewing people while blazed as fuck.
That I would be scared of. I would be very angry. Or maybe I would be less scared. You know what? Maybe I would be less anxious if I just got stoned before interviews. Oh, God. I'm anxious enough before them already.
David,
Yes?
you ever feel like you got your own Sutter Cane in your life?
Sutter Cane, famous author, great guy. Yeah.
Well, no.
Not really.
No, he's kind of a figure of madness, right?
Oh, that's true. That's true. What I think about, he actually does write books that drive people mad. I forgot about that part of him.
Right. He looms large over all of us. He gets in the way of our happiness, prevents us from achieving our goals, unless your goal is to murder someone with an axe.
That should not be a goal, by the way.
It should not. It should not be a goal for anybody.
No. Okay. Well, what's your point?
My point is, BetterHelp is kind of the anti-Sutter Cane.
BetterHelp will help drag you out of the mouth of madness.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
It pulls you further away from the wall of monsters.
And this podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp.
It is, once again.
which assesses your needs and matches you with your own licensed professional therapist. You can start communicating in under 48 hours. It's not a crisis line. It's not self-help. It's professional therapy done securely online.
Mm-hmm.
And
there's
they got broad.
no,
go ahead.
yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say there's a broad range of expertise available, which may not be locally available in many areas. I don't know what you were going to say. That's what I felt I needed to say.
I was going to say it's available to clients worldwide. You can log in your account anytime and send a message to your therapist. You'll get timely and thoughtful responses. Plus, you can schedule weekly video or phone sessions so you won't have to sit in an uncomfortable waiting room like with traditional therapy. And it's committed to facilitating great therapeutic matches so they make it easy and free to change therapists if needed.
Those are all great points, David, and I value your contribution.
It's more affordable than traditional offline therapy. Financial aid is available. And, you can visit their website, betterhelp.com/reviews, and check out some testimonials that are posted daily.
In fact, I have heard that so many people have been using BetterHelp that they are now recruiting additional therapists in all 50 nifty United States.
So, if you visit betterhelp.com/check, that's better, HELP, you can join the over 2 million people who've taken charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced professional. That's a special offer for Blank Check listeners. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/check. Okay? BetterHelp.com/check. That's better, HELP.com/check. You're going to get 10% off your first month.
And just to be clear, do not go to SutterCane.com/check. It's a bad website and it will break your brain.
Definitely. It's weird that we have a promo code for him.
We didn't want it. That's part of his madness.
Yeah,
we said
exactly.
do not.
It's too powerful.
Yeah.
What a good movie.
Really good movie. Should we play the box office game?
Yes, let's play the box office game. This movie came out February 3rd, 1995. It was kind of unceremoniously dumped
Yeah, a little dumb.
by New Line, sort of a betrayal by New Line, because they weirdly just apparently chose between Wes Craven's New Nightmare and this. They didn't want them to both come out in the Halloween period, and so they picked New Nightmare, which is a wonderful movie.
Yeah,
I
but
love
was
that
a
movie.
Huge flop.
No, it did better than this, but
Well,
I
I feel like it was.
hit. Yeah.
I feel like it was not well received at the time. People were pretty fucking confused.
It made
by it.
$20 million or whatever. Wasn't. Whereas this comes out in February and makes $8 million total. It was really just got abandoned, which sucks.
Yeah.
But it opened number 4 at the box office, Griffin, at a weird lame box office. Number 1 is a epic movie that I feel like is kind of forgotten, partly because it's not that good. But it was a big moment for a crucial hottie. Sort of
so
one
it's
of
a
his
Brad
kind
Pitt
of
movie.
Starring roles. Yeah, there you go.
Is it Legends of the Fall?
It's Legends of the Fall.
Yeah.
Have either of you seen Legends of the Fall?
Yes, I actually ranked all of Brad Pitt's performances about a year or two ago, so I have.
Where did you put Legends of the Fall?
Not high
I'm
up there,
interested.
I will say that.
Not really.
I know a lot of people like him in it because he's hot and has long hair and shit, but I'm he's not good in it. There's a lot of it was really interesting ranking all of his performances because I was damn, you were sucking for a while, dude. It took you a minute to find the right balance and figure out your persona.
It's that right. He's that actor who feels kind of uncomfortable just kind of playing the swashbuckling leading. He needed to kind of play some weirdos to sort of figure out how his image worked better. I don't know. Griff, what were you going to say, Griff?
No, my understanding of that movie's legacy is just that's the one where the hotness crystallized and it was kind of a disproportionate hit at the time
hot.
because people
Super
had Brad fever, but no one really cares about that movie. It was just the long hair broke everyone's brains for a moment.
Well, it's also funny because it's Anthony Hopkins kind of at the peak of his stardom too, post Silence of the Lambs, and it's also one of those movies though where Brad Pitt's character is it's set in Montana and he's the one who understands America and Native American traditions, but also he's this super white blonde guy. Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of there's a lot of stupidity in that movie, but it's very pretty, I guess. John Toll, sort of a handsome. Anyway, Legends of the Fall, big hit. It's number 1 in its 7th week, Griffin.
Jesus.
Wow.
It's just it's been number 1 for 4 or 5 weeks. It's been doing great. Number 2 is, and I say this not pejoratively, but it is the kind of movie that at the time Hollywood called a chick flick. I would say it's one of the lesser remembered ones, but it's 3 kind of major good actresses. It's a road trip movie.
Is it okay? Is it How to Make an American Quilt?
It's not How to Make an American Quilt. You're sort of in the right zone.
Yeah. Is this the one with Drew Barrymore?
Drew Barrymore, Whoopi Goldberg, and Mary Louise Parker.
Is it Boys on the Side?
Boys on the Side.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
Herbert
Never
Ross's
seen-
Boys on the Side. I've never seen it either.
No.
I know that Mary Louise Parker, I think, gets AIDS in it. It was sort of like one of those kind of like weepy comedy dramas that has like social issues kind of like woven into the script in this kind of obvious. It's written by Don Roos before
Herbert Ross?
Directed by Herbert Ross. Yes.
Right. Okay.
Whoopi but as much as I've never seen this movie, and I don't think this is like a particularly beloved movie, wild to imagine Hollywood releasing a Whoopi, Drew, Mary Louise Parker movie now. You know what I mean? Like, it's just they put them out, but it's a Warner Brothers release.
Well, we talked about this because Fried Green Tomatoes came up in the box office game
a year before.
There was this era of just doing
this.
this sort of like generational women's light drama, and they were big, and it goes all the way to sort of like the Waiting to Exhale, but you can kind of like Mermaids as maybe a starting point. Steel Magnolias, obviously. I don't know. It was like it was a fertile genre for about a decade there.
Yeah.
Number 3, we're swerving, Griffin. Ben, pay attention. This movie, I feel like it was your kind of movie. It is a I don't know. It's a comedy. About 2 guys who had become very popular as
it's the Jerky Boys movie.
It's the Jerky Boys movie. How do you give clues to the Jerky Boys movie?
Yeah, here's how I guessed it. You said it was a big Ben Energy movie, and you struggled to explain how these guys became popular. There's no other movie that fits that better than the Jerky Boys movie. I don't know. Who are these guys? They were fucking... Oh, it's the Jerky Boys movie.
They're prank callers.
They're prank call. I've only ever heard of it. I never... Not
have
my
also
cup
never
of
seen
tea.
Well, it really
Ben,
is
did you
just
like
designed.
the Jerky Boys?
Oh yeah, it's designed for 13-year-olds. Like it's just for little shits.
Have you seen the film? Because I believe the premise of the film is that the Jerky Boys prank call the mafia.
Correct. And I believe Peter
They get
Falk
in
plays
trouble?
the mom... Or no, Alan Arkin plays
Alan
the mob
Arkin,
boss?
it looks like.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I remember seeing it and walking away and being like, not enough prank calls.
Wow.
Right.
Wow.
Too much plot. Too much plot.
Too much plot, more pranks.
They forgot what made them good. Right.
Yeah, man. That's where they made
number
their error.
4. Number 4. That's where they not calling the mafia. Number 4 is In the Mouth of Madness. Number 5 is one of the hit comedies of this year. It technically came out Christmas time, but it's gonna make so
Dumb
much
and Dumber?
money. It's Dumb and Dumber.
Yeah, that's another big New Line movie. I mean,
Yeah.
that's another
Very
movie
much so.
DeLuca gets credit for spearheading. Yeah.
1994. Wow.
Yeah.
Feels like a
1994.
lifetime ago.
I was 8 years old.
I
Nobody's
was not
Fool.
even 5, so I was young. Yeah.
Humble brag.
Yeah.
You got Nobody's Fool, the Paul Newman movie, and number 6, you have Highlander, The Final Dimension. Is
That's
that
3?
3?
I think that's
That
3.
is 3, yes, with Christopher Lambert. That is the one apparently where with Mario Van Peebles is maybe the villain. I'm not sure.
I'm sorry.
He's definitely in
I
it.
think that is 4 because Highlander. No. You're right. It was released in other
It's
countries
3.
as Highlander 3: The Sorcerer. That's what it was.
It
Okay.
sometimes was called The Sorcerer. I have also only seen the original Highlander. I have not seen The Quickening. I have not seen Endgame.
Well, they
Apparently
told
there's
me.
more.
This is the thing. They told me there would be only one. So then when 2, 3, 4 come out, I'm like, what's this shit? You told me. You made me a promise.
All right. All right. Yeah.
All right.
Number 8 at the box office is Higher Learning, which we covered
Yes.
on this podcast.
Okay, I knew some of these
Angelica,
movies sounded familiar.
I don't know how you feel about Higher Learning, the John Singleton's third film, right? Yes.
I'm no comment on John Singleton. So
No comment. Okay.
yeah,
Fair
I'm gonna
enough.
Leave that. Mhm.
You've also got Murder in the First, an underrated crime thriller starring, like a prison movie starring Kevin Bacon.
Right.
Mark-
That was one of like several 90s Bacon wants to get his best supporting actor nomination.
He gets like a
movies.
SAG nom. He gets close
Right.
or whatever. Right.
He gave up
good-
being a
do-
leading man and took supporting roles and kept on almost getting nominated.
And then you've got the 1994 Little Women. Still hanging around with Christian Bale.
Oh, little
and,
Christian Bale.
Kiki Dunst and Winona, obviously.
Trini
and,
Alvarado.
absolutely. Samantha Mathis. All those good people. Claire Danes.
Good people.
Yeah. Not a bad movie. Gillian Armstrong, speaking of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's, but in the Mouth of Madness, no, it's just another sad tale of like, you read the reviews and a lot of the reviews, once again, are like, Carpenter almost had me, and then he goes all in on fucking makeup and special effects. Like the weird guard that these critics had against like schlock.
I know.
But now, I think more people dig In the Mouth of Madness and definitely see it for what it's worth. I think it's definitely gained an appreciation, although I still feel sometimes it's underappreciated even by people who did Carpenter. Like, it's not usually the first movie of his that people will mention, even though it's like one of the first to pop into my head personally.
Yeah, this is definitely top tier for me.
Yeah.
Me too.
And-
This is a top 5, maybe top 3. I don't know. I'll
Yeah,
get to
it's
my
like
Carpenter
top
rankings.
2-3 for me.
But this feels like this is followed by another sort of major career shift, right? I mean, this is sort of the last Carpenter movie that feels kind of classically Carpenter. And they all get a lot more bombastic after this.
Because the next one is Village of the Damned, then Escape from LA, Vampires. I haven't seen in years, but I remember being very bombastic. Angelica,
Ghosts of
do you
Mars.
like any of these sort of later Ghosts of Mars and The Ward? Do you like any of the later, like, sort of end of career Carpenters?
No, I honestly, it's not on my wavelength the way his earlier works are. I can appreciate parts of them is what I've noticed, but they don't really have the gut punch effect that something like In the Mouth of Madness has.
Well, Griff, considering this series has basically been all bangers, I am very intrigued by how this last chunk is going to go.
Oh,
But
totally.
it'll be fun.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too. I'm curious, but I do feel a little. It feels a little bittersweet this episode because it's
Aw.
like
Right, that it's the final like agreed on masterpiece.
this
the
is
rest
probably
we're
the
gonna be
last
sort of
masterpiece,
like,
right?
Right, yeah.
Right. Unless I come in with some radical vampires.
Yeah,
take,
you're gonna
you
squint.
know?
Well, some people love vampires. Some people love vampires.
Some people do. Bella Swan loves vampires.
Oh,
She sure does.
Yeah,
She
does.
She does.
One
She
of the
loves
does.
them.
Yeah.
She does. Can I just say that one of the lines that has stuck with me with this movie is reality is not what it used to be, because damn, isn't that the truth
That's
about
the truth.
everything we're going through right now?
That's what I'm saying. Even I have to
David's
admit
fucking
it.
joking about it. You have to admit, but every one of these movies I rewatched them, I'm like, this one hits too hard. Carpenter was fucking ahead of the
Right.
curve, and he saw it all, and everything feels like a fucking John Carpenter movie now. Like, it used to be him heightening his perception of reality to a satirical bent, and now it just feels like a Carpenter movie. Now everything's
Yeah.
at that click.
Oh, totally. We're
Yeah.
living in very surreal, devastating, destabilizing times. And
Yeah.
what's a better movie to watch at like 5 a.m. than In the Mouth of Madness to remind you of that?
Yeah, I mean, I love watching these movies, and then I hate when the movie ends and I look outside my window.
And it's like, yes, I guess I shall return to this hell that we call our current reality.
Yeah,
Wow.
which just has, less compelling cinematography.
Yeah, much less. And the people aren't as hot. you
No.
know.
Nope.
It's,
Nope.
it's not as well written.
Definitely not.
Angelica, people should read all of your work. You're one of the best people out there writing about movies, and I think in particular you write about acting particularly well.
Thank you.
I think that's a blind spot of a lot of critics, and I anytime you go in deep on a movie star, it's a must read for me.
Thank you. That really means a lot. Acting is one of my favorite things to write about when it comes to film, because it's there's such an kind of elusive quality to it. It's hard to kind of grab your hand around what an actor is actually doing and how it interacts with the editing, the lighting, and the directing, so on and so forth. But I have some acting essays that are going to be coming out soon. I'm really excited to start writing more about acting.
Cool.
I don't know. I'm just trying to challenge myself as a critic and keep leveling up. You know what I mean?
Love it. Yeah, excited to read it.
You're
Thank
the
you
best.
so much
Thank
for doing
you
it.
for doing the show. Yeah. You'll be back.
Thank you, guys. This was a lot of fun, and I look forward to coming back and cursing a lot.
Absolutely.
Hell yeah.
We love cursing here.
Fucking rules.
Yeah, fucking rules.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
Shit.
Yeah, and thank all of you fuckers for listening. Thank you to fucking Marie Barty for our social media, Joe Bowen and Pat Reynolds for our artwork, Leigh Montgomery and the Great American Novel for our theme song. You can listen to their new album, Extremely Loud and Incredibly, online, wherever music is found. Thank you to JJ Birch and Nick Loriano for our research, and AJ McKeon and Alex Barron for our editing. Every time, now that there's so many more names, every time I'm worried I'm going to flip everyone's name. I'm going to give people the wrong credit or combine two names into some portmanteau or whatever. I'm doing fine. I'm in the mouth of madness. Go to blankies.reddit.com for some real nerdy shit, and go to patreon.com/blankcheck for Blank Check special features where we do commentaries on franchises. We're finishing up The Mummy, the modern mummies, the three Frasers, and the Tom Cruise mummy. Its own weird form of modern horror.
But what comes after that?
Can we say it at this point? When's this episode coming out?
This episode is coming out October 31st, Halloween itself.
What?
Oh my goodness! Are you? Why didn't you tell me that before?
We
I
should-
would have.
I didn't
should have
know.
mentioned it.
Spooky ass energy.
All right, wait. Can we get some clean, spooky takes, and we'll just intersperse them throughout the episode?
It's just me going, wow, Pinhead is hot. Did anybody else think Pinhead was hot? Just me?
Cool. We'll put that throughout
All right,
the
great.
episode a couple of times.
Yep. We'll just sprinkle that.
Yeah. No, I guess we should announce in the spirit of Halloween that in November, Santa Claus is coming to town on the Blank Check Patreon. We're doing the Tim Allen Santa Claus trilogy.
That's true. That's our disgusting end of
Oh
the
my
year.
God.
Yep. We'll be subjecting
series-
ourselves to those.
That I would like to reclaim as upscale horror. I would like to make the case. Maybe Lamb is not horror, but the Santa Claus trilogy is.
It's deranged enough. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's body horror.
Oh,
His
God,
body goes
yeah.
through some weird shit. His beard
Changes,
grows too fucking
transforms.
fast.
It's true.
He goes back and forth a couple times. It's got evil robots in the third one. Anyway, I don't know. That's our episode on In the Mouth of Madness. Next week, tune in for Village of the Damned. And as always, what can I say? Pinhead's kind of hot.